Chapter 331. It was the beginning of winter, and it was a very ordinary noon. Lin Yuan talked about his idea of establishing a faction as he usually chatted with Wen Yu. In just a few dozen minutes, Lin Yuan had clearly explained his plans for his faction. Upon seeing that Wen Yu was listening attentively, Lin Yuan simply asked, "Wen Yu, what do you think is the most suitable path for me to take if I want to establish my own faction?" Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Wen Yu replied without hesitation, "Young master, if you want to develop your own private force, the path of accumulating resources is the most suitable." Lin Yuan nodded and motioned for Wen Yu to continue. He had only mentioned his plan to build a faction and his advantages, but he had not said his specific plan to develop his faction in the future. However, in his opinion, Wen Yu's point of view could be said to coincide with his development point of view to a certain extent. When Wen Yu saw that Lin Yuan did not directly state his position and wanted her to continue speaking, she felt a little embarrassed. Wen Yu pondered for a while and pondered for a full 5 minutes before speaking seriously. "Young master, according to the idea of building a private force that you mentioned just now, it is most suitable for us to take the best route in terms of accumulating resources. The better the resources we offer, the greater the harvest for our force. Moreover, as long as we have the most luxurious resources, no one will not want to curry favor with us. That's why we have to use the best resources to prove our foundation. Once we release our foundation, the other forces will try their best to establish a relationship with us and use their luxurious resources to exchange for the luxurious resources in our hands. We just need to make sure that we have luxurious resources that they don't have, but that they desperately want. That way, we'll be able to grasp the other forces tightly and squeeze more resources from them than we're willing to pay." When Lin Yuan heard her words, he could not help but raise his eyebrows. She was indeed worthy of being the prodigal Wen Yu who had built the mansion. Her words were indeed extraordinary. However, when she expressed her thoughts in a few words, what she said about the development direction of the faction was almost completely in line with Lin Yuan's idea. In fact, when Wen Yu was expressing her thoughts, she was thinking about what had happened over the past month. Wen Yu had read the detailed information about the Radiance Federation's various factions in the Radiant Moon Palace's database and had expressed her feelings. Because she understood him, she would speak her mind in front of him. If she did not understand at all, she would not talk in front of him no matter what. At that moment, Lin Yuan's face revealed a bright smile. In fact, there were many ways to develop a private force, and not all of them were absolutely beneficial to the development of the force. However, if one wanted to develop a powerful force, then there could only be one voice in that force to make the main decisions. As for Lin Yuan's faction, he naturally had to make the main decisions. However, he wanted Wen Yu to help develop his faction as his assistant, so her voice must be consistent with his. Otherwise, even if she had a strong strategic talent in allocating resources and judging the situation, he would not let her play a supporting role in his faction's development. This was because if the two people's development routes were different and Lin Yuan and Wen Yu made different decisions, it would be equivalent to two forces. Even if these two forces wanted to pull the faction forward in one direction, the two forces would also invisibly restrain each other and divide the strength. Such development was not good for a private faction. However, based on the conversation just now, Lin Yuan knew Wen Yu's thoughts, and they happened to be in line. Then the private faction that Lin Yuan wanted to build could outline its embryonic form. At that moment, Wen Yu took a deep breath and said with a very serious expression, "Young master, how big do you want to build your faction?" At that moment, Lin Yuan took a deep breath and said with a very serious expression, "Young master, how big do you want to build your faction?" Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan raised his head and looked at the bright sun in the distance. The Radiance Federation is just a starting point. When Lin Yuan said this, he thought of the floating island whale that had yet to hatch in his spirit lock spatial zone. With the floating island whale, a behemoth that could build a sky city on its back, Lin Yuan's faction could not be limited to the Radiance Federation. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Wen Yu clenched her fists. She felt Lin Yuan's big picture and the magnificent waves in his heart. As Lin Yuan's assistant, Wen Yu knew that she still needed to grow. However, in the face of Lin Yuan's plan to build a faction, Wen Yu was willing to put in all her effort to help outline the outline of this grand faction. Lin Yuan was originally looking at the bright sun in the sky when he heard Wen Yu say, "Young master, I'm ready to face all the challenges when building a faction in the future." Upon hearing Wen Yu's words, Lin Yuan smiled and said, "Relax. It won't be very difficult when we build a faction." When Lin Yuan decided to build a faction, he had actually anticipated everything he would face in his heart. After just 1.5 months, after experiencing the training in the controlled Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift, he had an additional yardstick to measure people's hearts and whether they were good or evil. Lin Yuan could completely remove the yardstick in his heart to measure whether he should do it or not. The establishment of a faction was not child's play, and it was not as simple as opening a small store on Star Web. Lin Yuan's Star Web store had always seemed to be calm and had no impact on Lin Yuan. However, it was not that no one had done anything. First, Lin Yuan's Star Web store was self-produced and did not need to worry about the supply. Second, even if others were to cause trouble, the market demand for elite spirit siphon goldfish and silver usnias was simply too great. Even if someone wanted to cause trouble for Lin Yuan's Star Web store, there was no good way. Therefore, Lin Yuan's Star Web store had been developing so smoothly and steadily. However, the establishment of a faction would have to withstand the suppression of other factions at the very beginning. If it could not withstand the suppression of other factions, it would be forced out under the encroachment and collision of other factions. Of course, these were just the problems that some ordinary factions needed to face. Lin Yuan had the ability to easily take out Bronze/Epic phase. In fact, it was not difficult for him to even take out Bronze/Legend phase. He was confident that he could make other factions become bootlickers. However, the hardest thing for bootlickers was not to think about how to bootlick Lin Yuan's faction. It was that they could not bootlick Lin Yuan's faction even if they wanted to. Today's second update, end of this chapter. Chapter 332. Take Lin Yuan's Star Web Store as an example. When Lin Yuan's Star Web Store released the news of exchanging any quality of Bronze/Epic phase for the Day and Night Spirit Silver and Source-type items, the targeting from the other Star Web stores had completely disappeared. As long as Lin Yuan showed his foundation, no Star Web store would dare to take out any kind of Bronze/Epic phase. He would become enemies with a Star Web store that was suspected to be backed by an advanced class for Creation Master. Similarly, as long as Lin Yuan's private faction could take out any kind of Bronze/Epic phase, it did not even need to take out Bronze/Legend phase. The other factions would crazily try to befriend it at all costs. These factions that crazily wanted to befriend Lin Yuan's private faction would think of all ways to curry favor with Lin Yuan's private faction. Some might even help Lin Yuan's private faction develop. However, Lin Yuan could only apologize to these factions. This was because Lin Yuan had already thought of his private faction's development model. Lin Yuan's development model was destined to make it impossible for these factions that wanted to befriend his private faction. After Lin Yuan took out the Bronze/Epic phase and traded them a few times, he understood their value even more. The greatest value of Bronze/Epic phase lay in their unparalleled attraction to Spirit Chi professionals who had comprehended willpower runes. This was because Bronze/Epic phase were equivalent to a better future for those Spirit Chi professionals who had comprehended willpower runes. Most of the powerful factions had Class 4 Creation Masters presiding over them. Factions without Class 4 Creation Masters were far inferior to those with Class 4 Creation Masters presiding over them in terms of foundation. These factions with Class 4 Creation Masters presiding over them did not mean that they did not lack Bronze/Epic phase. If a Class 4 Creation Master wanted to enhance a Bronze/Epic Fae, not only would he need to spend a lot of resources, but he would also need a lot of time to nurture it. The Class 4 Creation Masters in the large factions were all worshipped and did not always nurture Faes. This caused the shortage of Bronze/Epic Faes. The King-class experts that those large factions had might not be able to completely rank up to the Class 4 Creation Masters' resources. Not to mention the other people in the faction. These major factions with Class 4 Creation Masters were able to attract more King-class experts to join them. Therefore, these major factions had become the buyers with the highest demand for Bronze/Epic Faes in the market. At present, there was no faction in the Radiance Federation that provided the service of customizing Bronze/Epic Faes based on the comprehended willpower rune. Such a service that allowed one to customize a Bronze/Epic Fae based on the comprehended willpower rune would mostly require an appointment with some Class 4 or Pinnacle Class 4 Creation Masters. In fact, if one wanted to make an appointment with a High Class or Pinnacle Class 4 Creation Master, even if they paid the price, they would have to spend a lot of connections and wait for a few years. Waiting for a few years was undoubtedly equivalent to not using the willpower rune for a few years after comprehending it. However, this was something that couldn't be helped, as high-grade or even Pinnacle Class 4 Creation Masters had such status and prestige. If you don't like to wait, there are a lot of people behind you who will thank you for being willing to wait. This was also why Lin Yuan had sent out the news of using any species of Bronze/Epic Faes to trade for items in the purchase with no loss store. Even if there were 3 source-type items among the items that Lin Yuan wanted to trade for, there were still so many people frantically trading for them, and the reason why it attracted so much attention. Therefore, Lin Yuan thought that since his faction's initial goal was to accumulate resources, he might as well let his faction be the first to eat crabs. To eat this crab, which was specially customized according to the different willpower rune comprehended by the Spirit Chi professionals, Lin Yuan didn't need any capital. This crab did not require any capital for Lin Yuan. Therefore, Lin Yuan was going to eat this crab. Not only was he going to eat it, but he was also going to eat it to his heart's content. Since he was going to eat it, how to eat it became the key. Therefore, Lin Yuan had to think about how to eat this crab in a mysterious, elegant, and pretentious manner. It was like eating a crab after breaking open the shell. If he did not even remove the crab gills and the crab heart, he would just chew the crab legs in his mouth. Although he had eaten the crab, it would be bad because of the crab gills and the crab heart. Moreover, chewing the crab legs would also lose the enjoyment and texture of eating the crab. However, if he ate it with the 8 crab pieces, it would be elegant, but it would be too troublesome. Lin Yuan didn't want to be bad when eating the crab, nor did he want to affect the taste. He didn't want to eat it too troublesome. Therefore, what Lin Yuan had to do was to set up a pot whenever he wanted to eat the crab. When the pot was set up, Lin Yuan would casually add a fire, and a large number of crabs would peel off their shells and scramble to jump into the pot. After these crabs steamed themselves, they even wanted to invite Lin Yuan to eat them. This was the highest satisfaction of being a crab eater. Lin Yuan already had his own plans on how to eat the crab. Now, Lin Yuan needed to enhance the vital Fae, the Oath Lily of the Valley, for his own plans. Of course, it was not just the Oath Lily of the Valley. As a transmigrator who had lived one more lifetime than others, Lin Yuan understood the importance of quality and hunger marketing. Because of quality and hunger marketing, other factions would frantically compete for the opportunity to be a crab. Therefore, Lin Yuan could also start implementing the Fate Letter plan. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly felt his hand sink. When Yu put the watering can in her hand and said energetically, "Young master, I'll go to my room and write a proposal for you." After saying that, she hurriedly ran back to the mansion to write the proposal. Lin Yuan could not help but laugh involuntarily. Although Wen Yu had an extremely strong strategic talent in allocating resources and judging the situation, she was still a young girl and still needed to be tempered. At that moment, Lin Yuan found that Wen Yu's contracted source-type Earth Surge Golden Lotus was shaking its huge golden lotus-shaped flower, looking a little aggrieved. He didn't seem to understand why his contractor would abandon him here and run away all of a sudden. Upon seeing that, Lin Yuan took over Wen Yu's position and accompanied the source-type Earth Surge Golden Lotus to bask in the sun. He then regularly watered the Earth Surge Golden Lotus with the spirit liquid that Wen Yu had concocted in the spray bottle. When Lin Yuan saw that the spirit fluid that Wen Yu had concocted was almost done, he put the watering can on the side of the flower bed. At that moment, Lin Yuan had already decided that apart from the dragon's mouth orchid, the wood-weaving house centipede, and the three-tailed dragon phoenix landscape carp, he was going to use the dragon's mouth orchid. The sixth Fei was the oath lily of the valley. Third watch asking for tickets, end of chapter. It was precisely because of this reason that many of the newly established factions on Star Web would run over to the veteran factions. He would spend a large number of Radiance dollars to apply to scan some of the items that had not been scanned by the Star Web card and that could support his reputation. For example, some ornaments or furniture made of jade-textured wood. For ornaments or furniture made of completely jade-textured wood, no matter how much money was offered, those veteran forces would not lend them out. This was because an item made of completely jade-textured wood, which represented their foundation, was not enough for the veteran forces. On the surface, some of the newly established forces had already reached the level of veteran forces. However, the veteran powers looked down on these newly established powers. That was because these rising forces were inferior to the veteran forces in terms of foundation. To a certain extent, some of the veteran forces with deep foundations were more likely to compete with the rising forces. This was like a chain of contempt. The veteran forces relied on their rich resources and felt that the rising forces were just a group of nouveau riches gathered together. They did not have a foundation that had settled down over the years. However, they had to admit that these veteran forces were indeed stronger than the rising forces. That was because sometimes, having resources could indeed represent strength. Compared to those rising forces, the veteran forces could obtain the loyalty of those king-class experts more easily. This was because those king-class experts didn't just need to consume resources to nurture their contracted phase. They also needed to comprehend willpower runes and save up resources to exchange for high-quality bronze phase. It could be said that they needed to consume a lot of resources at all times. Some of the descendants of the wealthy clans did not need to worry about the demand for these resources, but for those spirit chi professionals who had ordinary families and had to rely on themselves to work hard. If they wanted to go further after reaching king class, it was often much easier to join some veteran forces than to work hard on their own. Take the king-class expert squad that Lin Yuan had participated in for an example. This king-class expert squad did not rely on the veteran forces. Instead, a few pinnacle king-class experts huddled together for warmth. It was also because of this reason that after two of the squad members comprehended willpower runes, they still needed to integrate resources before they could exchange for bronze/epic phase. It could be seen that the resources that the king-class experts needed to consume and the resources that they could earn were not proportional. They needed to consume more. This was a king-class expert squad that huddled together for warmth. How could those king-class experts who were alone have it easy? Therefore, for these king-class experts who were alone, joining a veteran faction was the best choice. It was also because of this that the veteran factions often had many forces hidden in the dark. They were unlike those rising forces that liked to put all their forces in the light to attract more people to join. However, the strength of such a rising faction and a veteran faction was not absolute. Such variables could be triggered by those high-class creation masters. If a rising faction without too much foundation had the support of a class for creation master, it would quickly be promoted to a veteran faction. It would slowly be recognized by other veteran factions. In any case, Lin Yuan wanted to establish his private faction on Star Web. Therefore, the first step was to purchase a piece of land to establish his private faction. Lin Yuan was not worried at all about the application for a private faction on Star Web. A pinnacle king-class expert could apply for a private faction, and it was no longer a problem for Lin Yuan. As Lin Yuan's guardian, Endless Summer was naturally considered his subordinate. As a suzerain/myth 3 Fey, Endless Summer's strength had already reached the standard of an Emperor-class spirit chi professional. As long as the application reached the standard, it would be approved. Therefore, Lin Yuan was not thinking about how to apply to establish his own private faction. Instead, he was thinking about how to arrange his private faction's territory. Chapter 1, End of this chapter. Chapter 334. Lin Yuan had a lot of good stuff in his hands, and if he was willing to take them out, he would be able to do so. If he was willing to take them out, it would not be difficult for him to arrange his faction's territory. However, Lin Yuan did not intend to spend effort to arrange the environment outside his faction's territory. Spending effort to arrange and build the environment outside his faction's territory was equivalent to wasting his time. The floating island whale had not hatched yet. If Lin Yuan prepared a large number of phase and spiritual materials to use the Star Web card to scan and use them to arrange the territory, it would be equivalent to wasting a batch of resources in his hands. It would be equivalent to throwing a batch of resources into his hands to arrange the external environment of Star Web's private territory. If the scanned items were sold, these items would also disappear from Star Web's private territory. After each transaction, the number of times the Star Web card had scanned these items would be refreshed. Since Lin Yuan wanted to build a low-key and mysterious faction, he did not need to spend effort to build the external environment of his faction. However, Lin Yuan still had to spend some effort on the internal layout of his faction. As for the internal construction of his faction, he needed to fully display his foundation. Although Lin Yuan had a design plan for the internal construction of his private territory, he only had the design plan. However, Lin Yuan only had a design plan and not the spirit craftsmanship in this aspect. Therefore, Lin Yuan needed to let Hu Quan realize the design in his mind through his superb spirit craftsmanship. Hu Quan's craftsmanship was already at the level of a Class 5 spirit craftsman and could fully undertake the arrangement arranged by Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan's private faction's operation mode on Star Web relied entirely on the fate letters. As for the fate letters, Lin Yuan chose spirit chi professionals who had comprehended willpower runes to privately customize bronze/epic phase suitable for willpower runes. Lin Yuan planned to let his private faction send out 100 fate letters through auction every 3 days. Experts, wealthy families, and even major factions would use Radiance dollars as chips to compete for these fate letters. This competition was only for the possibility of obtaining the opportunity to privately customize bronze/epic phase according to the spirit chi professionals' comprehended willpower runes. Experts, wealthy families, and even major factions who came to participate in the auction of the fate letters could only auction 1 fate letter each. After 100 fate letters were auctioned, the 100 factions that had won the 100 fate letters could use Star Web's automatic lottery function. These 100 fate letters would be randomly distributed to the 100 factions that had bought them. Among these 100 fate letters, 99 of them had black wings drawn on them. Such letters were called ash letters. The ribbon ash letters represented not obtaining the opportunity to privately customize bronze/epic phase according to the willpower runes they comprehended. Among these 100 fate letters, only 1 letter had white wings drawn on it. This letter was called an angel letter. Drawing the angel letter was equivalent to obtaining the opportunity to customize a bronze/epic phase based on the willpower rune that one had comprehended. If the faction that drew the angel letter wanted to use this opportunity, it would have to pay 3 source-type items of any choice and make an exchange oath. When the next fate letter was sent out 3 days later, he would be able to collect a custom-made bronze/epic phase based on the willpower rune that he comprehended. As of the exchange, Lin Yuan, of A to of the exchange when he needed to of it. As long as Lin Yuan could take out resources of the same value, the faction that had previously received the angel's letter and made an exchange oath would have to unconditionally agree to Lin Yuan's request to exchange resources. Such resources could be phase or spiritual ingredients. The exchange oath was the reason why Lin Yuan needed to enhance the oath lily of the valley. The oath lily of the valley was a plant that was about 30 centimeters tall and had bell-shaped white flowers on its leaves. The oath lily of the valley's ability was that each of its bell-shaped white flowers could be used as a carrier to undertake the oath. Spirit Chi professionals with willpower runes could directly swear to the oath lily of the valley. After the oath lily of the valley and the Spirit Chi professional reached an exchange oath, the original white bell-shaped flower would turn golden. The golden oath lily of the valley that carried the exchange oath would fall from the oath lily of the valley. At the same time, a new white oath lily of the valley flower would grow at the spot where the oath lily of the valley flower had fallen. At the same time, a new white oath lily of the valley flower would grow at the spot where the oath lily of the valley flower had fallen. This golden oath lily of the valley flower, which bore the weight of the oath of exchange, was equivalent to proof of this. If the exchange contract was completed, the golden oath lily of the valley flower would wither. However, if the exchange oath on the golden oath lily of the valley flower was unilaterally broken, the oath lily of the valley would unleash the curse effect that was unique to phase like the oath lily of the valley. This curse effect would seal the Spirit Chi professional's willpower rune that they had used to swear the exchange oath. This was the same as the violator wasting a willpower rune that could not be used. Such a punishment was severe. Although the punishment for swearing the exchange oath was severe, it was extremely fair as long as it was not a violation. Otherwise, if everyone was customizing bronze/epic phase based on the willpower runes they comprehended, it would be too troublesome. It would be too troublesome if they had to issue an exchange oath with the faction owner every 3 days. Moreover, Lin Yuan did not have the time to stand inside his faction's territory every 3 days and wait for the buyers who had received the angel's letter to swear the exchange oath. This way, Lin Yuan would become the mailbox to receive the exchange oath. The oath lily of the valley could completely take over this job. In fact, in the Radiance Federation, it was rare to use the willpower rune to swear the oath lily of the valley. It could even be said to be very rare. In a certain sense, the oath lily of the valley was the privilege of class for creation masters. The oath lily of the valley could only accept the effect of the oath when it was at legend. The oath lily of the valley did not need to be at bronze to reach legend. Gold, platinum, and even diamond oath lily of the valley would have the same effect when it reached legend. Therefore, for some class for creation masters, it was not difficult to raise the oath lily of the valley to legend when it was at gold or platinum. However, Lin Yuan did not intend to do so. He intended to nurture a bronze/legend oath lily of the valley. This bronze/legend oath lily of the valley was enough to represent Lin Yuan's faction's foundation. It could be said that just this bronze/legend oath lily of the valley was much more shocking than a bunch of fancy and exquisite items placed outside his private territory. This was the most direct way for Lin Yuan to express his faction's foundation to other factions. Of course, this was just a way for Lin Yuan to express his faction's foundation. With that thought in mind, Lin Yuan returned to his room and logged into the star web. He was going to purchase a wood-weaving house centipede and an oath lily of the valley on the star web to enhance them. As soon as he logged into the star web, Lin Yuan saw that he had received a reply to the message he had sent to listen. This time, the content of the reply seemed to be even more anxious than before. Second update asking for votes, end of this chapter. If they could use things that were useless to their faction to express goodwill to creation masters, it would simply be an excellent thing. After all, there were only benefits and no disadvantages to giving a good impression to creation masters. However, such factions would not say how many source-type items they had, and the source-type items they took out for the creation masters to choose were also integers. However, Listen directly spread out his faction's trump card in front of Lin Yuan. Listen now only had a total of 11 source-type items, which was not good. All of Listen's source-type item resource reserves could not be compared to some small factions at all. It could even be said that the source-type item resource reserves that Listen currently had could not be called a faction. Moreover, who would hand over their trump card for no reason unless they had other plans? Listen's approach gave Lin Yuan a strange feeling. Listen didn't want to rely on me after handing over my trump card, right? Yesterday's third chapter, today's third chapter will be posted together from noon to afternoon. Asking for tickets, end of this chapter. He took the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's remaining 4 creation masters and joined a veteran faction. This was a huge blow to the already weak listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Listen had originally pinned all his hopes on the Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master from his Chamber of Commerce. When this Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master became a Class 4 Creation Master, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce might even advance from a rising faction to a veteran faction with a Class 4 Creation Master overseeing it. These Class 3 and Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Masters had been the backbone of the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce since Listen was young. Therefore, when Listen had been pouring a large amount of resources into this Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master and helping him break through to become a Class 4 Creation Master, he had not said anything. He wanted this Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master to use a willpower rune to swear an eternal loyalty to the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Of course, even if Listen wanted to make this Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master swear, he was not qualified. Moreover, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had long set its development goal on the ocean. When it encountered a calamity at sea, it had already lost the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's top martial force. Without the protection of martial force, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce was just a fish on the chopping block in front of other factions. Had it not been for Listen racking his brains to deal with them, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce would have long been nibbled away. Listen himself was not a creation master, and the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce did not have very abundant resources when it encountered a huge change. Therefore, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce still had to rely on the 4 Class 3 Creation Masters and the Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master who had already broken through to become a Class 4 Creation Master. In fact, even a Class 3 Creation Master would not easily use a willpower rune to swear allegiance to any faction. This was because only other spirit chi professionals and factions in this world would use a willpower rune to swear to a high-class Creation Master. This Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master had become a Class 4 Creation Master after eating a large amount of the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's resources. However, this Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master had also earned huge benefits for the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. It could even be said that the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's 3 years of high-class resources had been earned by this Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master. There were times when some Creation Masters would swear allegiance to certain factions, but the Creation Masters were different. However, this kind of allegiance generally only existed for veteran factions like Wind Mist City's richest family, the Gao family, which had a huge foundation. This kind of allegiance generally had a set time limit. After reaching a certain time limit, the effect of the oath would be lifted. This was also the reason why some Class 1 and Class 2 Creation Masters were willing to pay a few years of freedom to pledge allegiance to veteran factions in exchange for a chance to grow. After the Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master of the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce became a Class 4 Creation Master, he left with the other 3 Creation Masters. This situation was equivalent to the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's spring that might have just gushed out, but the spring's mouth had been taken away. Not only that, but if it was just this, the favors that Listen had made would also allow the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to tide over the difficulties. However, it was almost difficult for the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to rise again after losing its source. After this happened, Listen forcefully held on and stabilized the situation within a week. However, less than a day after stabilizing the situation, misfortune never came alone. At that moment, a veteran faction revealed its hidden venomous fangs. In fact, this veteran faction had been eyeing the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce for a long time. This veteran faction had paid a huge price to sign an exchange oath with the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce a year ago. This exchange oath was to exchange for 2 chances to upgrade a Bronze/Flawless Fey to Bronze/Epic from the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. If Listen could complete this exchange requirement, he would get a lot of resources. He would even get help from this veteran faction in some other aspects. However, if the exchange oath failed, then Listen had to agree to let this veteran faction intervene and develop the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce together. The reason Listen had signed this exchange oath was that this exchange oath would only be beneficial to the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce under the circumstances at that time. However, after the Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master that the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had nurtured became a class for Creation Master, he had left the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce with the other 3 Creation Masters. This had completely changed the situation. Today's first update, end of this chapter. Chapter 337. Listen also understood that he had been schemed against by this veteran faction. The Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's Creation Master had left. Although this veteran faction did not directly appear, there was a faint shadow of this veteran faction. In the current situation, if Listen let this veteran faction intervene in the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's development. After this veteran faction entered the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, Listen would not have the strength to resist at all. Perhaps in less than a month, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce would be equivalent to completely changing hands with this veteran faction. Therefore, at this critical moment, Listen used all the connections he had maintained over the years. But in the end, Listen found that his connections were not qualified to touch the category of a class for Creation Master. Even if he raised the market price and took out more source-type items, he still did not have this qualification. This made Listen, who already knew how precious a class for Creation Master's resources were, understand even more how powerful and terrifying they were. At the last moment, Listen suddenly thought of Lin Yuan, who had only traded once before. Lin Yuan had become Listen's last life-saving straw. Listen did not have much hope and just wanted to try his best. However, he did not expect that this life-saving straw that Lin Yuan had wanted to grab would become a driftwood that could save him. Deep gratitude emerged in Listen's originally exhausted expression. Suddenly, Listen's heart sank. Before Lin Yuan replied to the message, he solemnly typed a message. Listen, I wonder if the expert is interested in the Chamber of Commerce. After sending this message, Listen seemed to have lost all his strength. He had used all his abilities and means to protect the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce in the past 3 years. Listen had always had a clear understanding of himself. He knew that his extremely high emotional intelligence and ability to win people's hearts were not worth mentioning in the face of a veteran faction. There was a limit to one's strength. Listen had always positioned his talent in development and not in production resources. However, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had always given him a mess. There were simply no resources and time for Listen to use them to develop the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. However, Listen's heart was already relaxed at this moment. This was already the last effort that Listen could do for the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Lin Yuan was about to reply to Listen's message, but he did not expect that before he could reply. Listen had already sent another message. Upon seeing Listen's message, Lin Yuan could not help but smirk and sigh in his heart. It seemed that he had guessed correctly. Lin Yuan had not intended to respond to Listen. He only wanted to complete the transaction and obtain the 6 source-type items to accumulate resources. However, when Lin Yuan saw the words Chamber of Commerce, he was rather moved. Most of the stores that sold spiritual ingredients and phase on the star web came from large and small chambers of commerce. For example, the energy ores, butterfly shell flowers, and spirit siphon goldfish that he had purchased from Star Web's Zhou Jiasan store were actually supplied by these chambers of commerce. Some precious phase and spiritual materials usually had to be purchased or auctioned in the Rare Life Form Pavilion on the Star Web. However, the Radiance Federation's merchant associations occupied half of the daily consumption of ordinary spiritual ingredients and ordinary phase that had a high circulation rate. Lin Yuan needed to consume a lot of low-grade resources daily, and the consumption of energy ores was increasing. If he could control a chamber of commerce, it would be much more convenient for him to do anything in the future. In the future, he would no longer have to go through so much trouble to purchase low-grade spiritual ingredients and energy ores on the Star Web. The price of obtaining resources directly from the Chamber of Commerce was different on the Star Web. Even if Lin Yuan bought resources from Zhou Jiasan store, he would still be earning a portion of his own money, which was already much more favorable. However, the price was also very different from obtaining resources directly from the Chamber of Commerce. It was already extremely difficult to apply for a Chamber of Commerce's qualification in the Radiance Federation. Moreover, the most valuable thing about a Chamber of Commerce was not just the qualification but those small, meticulous channels. Every time a Chamber of Commerce established a relationship with a Star Web store, it was equivalent to having a stable income. Therefore, in the eyes of a faction, even a small Chamber of Commerce was considered a high-quality resource. This was also why veteran factions had their eyes on the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, which had been in decline at that time. Lin Yuan felt that he should meet Listen on the Star Web. He sent a message. Deep Mountain Elder Lin, bring your 11 source-type items to the Star Web Guest Center. After saying that, Lin Yuan set off first. When Listen saw Lin Yuan's message, he, who had just put down his worries and relaxed, suddenly felt his blood rush to his brain. He felt nervous and perturbed. This was because Listen did not see Lin Yuan's true thoughts from his message. It was reasonable to say that Lin Yuan asking him to meet on Star Web was equivalent to giving him a chance to talk face to face. However, Lin Yuan had asked him to bring 11 source-type items and seemed to just want to choose the source-type items to complete the previous transaction. Listen was originally disheartened, but now, he seemed to see a faint ray of hope amidst this perturbed. Listen was not afraid that hope was rare, but he was afraid that he would not even have the chance to grasp it. At that moment, Listen's heart became abnormally firm. How could a person who could be drowned by the fierce waves at any time not seize this rare opportunity? However, this hope of holding on to his courage was given to him by Deep Mountain Elder Lin, whom he had only made a transaction with once before. This feeling of, there is no way out after the mountains and rivers are heavy, and there is a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. It made Listen, who was used to relying on himself and had no one to rely on, feel extremely cherished. However, Listen still needed to fight for this path with all his might. This was because he knew that the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce that he owned was not worth mentioning in front of a faction that could casually take out Bronze/Epic phase. Listen set off with a firm and perturbed mood and headed to the Star Web Guest Center that Lin Yuan had agreed on. When he arrived at the appointed room in the Star Web Guest Center, Listen saw a sunny youth with a natural aura sitting there quietly, waiting for him. A hint of shock flashed in Listen's eyes. He had heard that the purchase with no loss Star Web Store's owner was a young man. Many people even compared the purchase with no loss Store's owner with the young hero, Black. However, Listen had never really believed these words. He really could not imagine that this faction, which clearly had a pinnacle class for Creation Master and could easily take out Bronze/Epic phase, was owned by a young man. Second update, end of this chapter. Chapter 338. Lin Yuan saw Listen in a daze and smiled brightly. Sit down and talk. Listen did not expect Lin Yuan to be so young. In fact, Lin Yuan did not expect Listen to be so young. He looked like he was only about 20 years old. Lin Yuan would not look down on Listen because of his young age. On the contrary, Lin Yuan thought highly of Listen because of his age. A high EQ and the ability to win people's hearts might be excellent in an older person, but it was not considered valuable. Under the tempering of time, adults who had experienced the ways of the world were always more tactful. However, Listen had such a high EQ and the ability to win people's hearts at such a young age. Lin Yuan could not help but sigh. Although Listen was shocked, he was grateful to Lin Yuan from the bottom of his heart. The young man in front of him, who had helped him in a desperate situation, might have just done a trivial thing to him. But to Listen, it was the most precious salvation. Since Listen had been firm about his plan. At that moment, Listen did not sit face to face with Lin Yuan. Instead, he knelt on one knee devoutly, put the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's remaining 11 source-type items on a tray, and raised it in front of the young man. Expert, I want to offer the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to get your protection. I only hope that you can protect the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and let me develop it. In the future, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and everything I have will be yours. Lin Yuan did not expect Listen to do this after entering the door and seeing him. Lin Yuan fell into deep thought. Since Listen said he wanted him to protect the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, Lin Yuan had to weigh the pros and cons. Should he protect the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce in trouble? Was the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's value worth protecting? While thinking, Lin Yuan could clearly feel Listen's hand, which was holding the tray containing the 11 source-type items, trembling slightly. It showed Listen's apprehension at that moment. However, the more silent Lin Yuan was, the tighter Listen's heart was, and the farther the hope in his heart was from him. At that moment, Listen's mind suddenly became very chaotic. For some reason, he thought of two kinds of food. One was pickled fish with pickled vegetables, and the other was braised chicken. Listen felt that he was a pickled fish with pickled vegetables, sour, vegetable, and extra. He still felt that he was a braised chicken, flustered, stuffy, and trash. And at that moment, Listen suddenly felt the 11 source-type items on the tray move. Listen knew that Lin Yuan had started to observe the source-type item in the tray. This made Listen's heart tighten, and the corners of his eyes turned a little red. However, the corners of Listen's mouth curled up. I only hope that you can protect the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and let it continue to develop. In the future, everything that belongs to the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and me will be yours. Listen had already let go of his insistence. It didn't matter if he wasn't around to develop the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. It would be fine as long as the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce that his father's generation had painstakingly supported could continue to exist. Lin Yuan was playing with the source-type item in the tray and pondering. Lin Yuan threw the source-type items in his hand onto the tray, making a crisp sound. Listen's hand that was holding the tray trembled. At that moment, Listen heard the youth's calm voice. If you pledge allegiance to the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, then you will naturally manage it. It seems that there are some things that can't be said on Star Web today. Upon hearing the youth's words, Listen was wrapped in ecstasy and froze on the spot. At that moment, he heard the youth's calm voice again. Come to the royal capital. Let's meet and talk in reality. Listen only felt that the holy sound that dispelled the haze pierced his ears and brushed away the tiredness and uneasiness of more than a month. At the same time, Listen's eyes flashed with a dazzling light of hope. Listen knew that since a bigwig like the youth in front of him said that he wanted to meet and talk with him in reality, it meant that there was a great chance of this matter being half done. Listen raised his head and said with a carefree smile that had been suppressed by the haze for a long time, I'm in Indigo Azure City. I'll go to the royal capital now. Lin Yuan and Listen made a verbal agreement on Star Web and left Star Web. Lin Yuan felt that Listen's sudden and decisive decision was a little sudden. However, he was more impressed by Lisan's amazing courage in addition to his high EQ and his ability to maintain interpersonal relationships. Lin Yuan did not directly agree to the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and Lisan's allegiance. Instead, he asked Lisan to come to his mansion in the royal capital to talk in detail. This was because Lin Yuan was still unaware of the problems that the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had encountered. Whether Lin Yuan wanted to control the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce through Lisan, he still needed to fully understand the situation before making a decision. However, Lin Yuan had previously agreed with Lisan that Lin Yuan would quickly complete the transaction of Lisan using 6 source-type items in exchange for 2 bronze/flawless phase to upgrade to epic. It was also considered helping Lisan get through the current difficulties. Lin Yuan had a good impression of Lisan, so when Lisan encountered difficulties, Lin Yuan agreed to the transaction and helped him. However, Lin Yuan wanted to build his own faction and do things that were beneficial to his faction. He would not do useless work because of his benevolent heart and let his faction bring a burden. Lin Yuan wanted to build a sky city on the floating island Whale's Back and let it be a cloud hanging in the sky above the 9 heavens. If he could control a power like the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce in the dark, for Lin Yuan, there would only be benefits and no disadvantages. This was because every power that Lin Yuan could control and hide in the dark could be considered a foundation in Lin Yuan's hands. Such a foundation was far more reliable than the power in the network that Lin Yuan had spread out. This was because white clouds could last for thousands of years, and white clouds could remain unchanged for thousands of years. This was because although the white clouds were floating, they had the world's water as their foundation. As soon as Lin Yuan left the room, he saw Wen Yu standing at his door with a few pieces of paper. From time to time, he would use a pen to make changes on these papers. His expression was extremely serious. Upon seeing Lin Yuan come out of the room, Wen Yu hurriedly said, "Young master, I was just about to knock on your door to look for you. What do you think of the proposal I wrote for the planning of a private force?" As she said that, she handed the 5 or 6 pieces of paper in her hand to Lin Yuan. His eyes were filled with anticipation. He took the pieces of paper that Wen Yu handed over, which clearly stated some of her views on the development of the faction. However, the more he looked, the more he felt that something was wrong. Third update, end of chapter. Chapter 339. Lin Yuan had already established the faction's development route in his previous conversation with Wen Yu. Lin Yuan already had a plan in his heart. However, Wen Yu had submitted this private faction's construction and views. Lin Yuan still read it very seriously. Through what was written on the paper, Lin Yuan could more intuitively see Wen Yu's views and direction on building a faction. At first, Lin Yuan could not help but secretly nod when he read it. Many of Wen Yu's ideas really coincided with his own. However, when he continued to read and saw Wen Yu's views on other factions, Lin Yuan felt that something was wrong. It was not that Wen Yu and Lin Yuan's ideas were different or that Wen Yu's views were wrong. It was just that when Wen Yu mentioned other factions, her words revealed a feeling. If Lin Yuan had to describe this feeling, it could only be described as a sense of superiority. Lin Yuan felt this sense of superiority in Wen Yu's words and quickly understood. As the Radiant Moon Palace's spirit attendant, Wen Yu's starting point was not what ordinary people could compare to. Therefore, Wen Yu's vision had always been at the level of the Leaning Moon Mountain and the Radiant Moon Palace. Wen Yu essentially did not care much about the Radiance Federation's other factions. If Wen Yu used this sense of superiority in other aspects, Lin Yuan might have to give her a few words of advice. However, if Lin Yuan started to develop his faction according to his previous strategy of accumulating resources, Lin Yuan felt that there was nothing wrong with Wen Yu's sense of superiority. On the contrary, this sense of superiority was a little insufficient. A bronze/epic Fey was equivalent to a luxury item for spirit chi professionals. As long as Lin Yuan wanted, he could have a large number of bronze/epic Feis. This meant that Lin Yuan could completely establish a luxury dynasty that mainly customized bronze/epic Feis. Every bronze/epic Fei could represent Lin Yuan's private faction's sense of superiority. At the same time, some large veteran factions might also be able to produce the sense of superiority derived from bronze/epic Feis. Although they might not necessarily be as many as Lin Yuan, it could not be said that they did not have the power to contend. However, compared to these large veteran factions, Lin Yuan could casually take out bronze/epic Feis to trade. It could be said that customizing bronze/epic Feis according to the willpower rune was a way for Lin Yuan's private faction to develop and absorb resources. Therefore, Lin Yuan's private faction's sense of superiority was always showing off to his actual faction. Those large veteran factions might have bronze/epic Feis, but they didn't have enough. However, these large veteran factions had always been in high demand for bronze/epic Feis. As long as these large, veteran forces did not collectively go crazy, they would definitely not let their bronze/epic undead go out. Therefore, Lin Yuan's faction had actually been at the pinnacle of superiority from the beginning. As long as he was willing, he could even take out bronze/legend Feis. Therefore, he could stand at the top of his sense of superiority and look down on the entire chain of contempt of his sense of superiority and look down on the other factions. All of these bronze/epic Feis were sought after by king-class experts in the market. Even if a large-scale veteran faction had a pinnacle class for creation master who was lucky enough to nurture a bronze/legend Fei, it would be impossible to do so. However, would a veteran faction that could produce a bronze/legend Fei be willing to put it on the market? Lin Yuan would not easily let a bronze/legend Fei flow into the market. However, this bronze/legend Fei was the strongest trump card for Lin Yuan's private faction to suppress other factions in terms of superiority. He did not even need anything else. He only needed a bronze/legend Oath Lily of the Valley. It would be able to clearly indicate to all other factions that Lin Yuan's private faction was not to be trifled with. In fact, compared to a Class 5 Creation Master, in terms of increasing a Fei's grade and healing a Fei's damaged roots, it was simply incomparable. In fact, Lin Yuan could not even compare to a Class 3 Creation Master in terms of increasing a Fei's grade and healing its damaged roots. He was only at the level of a Class 2 Creation Master. However, if it was to nurture a bronze/legend Fei, Lin Yuan did not think he would lose to a Class 5 Creation Master. In fact, Lin Yuan felt that a Class 5 Creation Master's ability to nurture bronze/legend Feis was not comparable to his at all. As long as Lin Yuan was willing to take out a Spirit Chi crystal condensed by Morbius Spirit Chi condensation, he would be able to inject it into these bronze/epic Feis. If he injected the Spirit Chi crystals into these bronze/epic Feis, Lin Yuan would be able to harvest at least 5 or even 6 legend Feis. According to this calculation, if Lin Yuan did not use the Spirit Chi crystals to increase the strength of his Feis, in that case, he would be able to have a bronze/legend Fei every day on average. This was why Lin Yuan's private faction could be mysterious. It could be noble. It could be superior to other factions in terms of resources. If Feis were compared to a luxury goods chain of contempt, then Lin Yuan was now standing at the top of the luxury goods chain of contempt. After reading Wen Yu's views on the private faction's development, Lin Yuan looked up and saw her expectant expression. Lin Yuan nodded firmly and said, "Wen Yu, your thoughts and plans are very good. Wen Yu, your ideas and plans are very good. Many of your views are the same as mine." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Wen Yu's face immediately revealed a joyful expression. Wen Yu was only a young girl who was less than 20 years old, but she was still a young girl. She would be happy and smile when being praised by the person she wanted the most. However, after Lin Yuan affirmed Wen Yu's plan, she heard him say solemnly, "Wen Yu, the superiority in this plan in terms of resources is not enough. The sense of superiority in this plan is not enough. We have the advantage, so we have the right to be arrogant. The more arrogant we are, the more the other factions will value us, fear us, and be unable to see through us. However, this is only in terms of resources, not in terms of martial power. We're building our own private faction, not the Leaning Moon Mountain or the Radiant Moon Palace. Thus, to the other factions, we're just a newly established faction. We still need time to fully develop our wings. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Wen Yu immediately understood what he meant and could not help but feel a little ashamed. Wen Yu also realized her own problem. While she was thinking about things, she suddenly felt that something was wrong. When she was thinking about things, she would always imperceptibly put the thinking that she had developed in the Leaning Moon Mountain's Radiant Moon Palace into her current thinking. Wen Yu also understood Lin Yuan's determination to build a private faction. A smart person like Wen Yu would not make the same mistake after knowing her problem. Young master, I know where the problem is. I'll go write another one and show it to you. Chapter 4, End of this chapter. Chapter 340. Wen Yu returned to her room and began to write down the development and planning of her new private force. At this time, Hu Quan, the true liver emperor, couldn't bear it anymore and returned to his room to catch up on his sleep. The mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer ate the 2 big pots of honey pancakes in the morning. Once again, they teamed up and strolled around the streets with a clear goal in mind. However, the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer had different goals. The mother of Bloodbath went out to eat all the delicacies it was interested in. On the other hand, Endless Summer's goal was to go to an accessory store to buy spirit accessories that she liked. Yesterday, Endless Summer had gone out to shop with the mother of Bloodbath for half a day. When she returned, she had bought nearly 100 necklaces, rings, bracelets, and brooches of all kinds. In short, the 2 suzerain/myth breed phase, the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer, had now fallen to the extent that they only knew how to buy things on the streets. It perfectly embodied the importance of eating and loving beauty for women. Lu Jia went straight to the Radiant Sacred Hall when he started cooking dinner this morning. 2 days later, Lu Jia would use the internal channels to conduct the Radiance 100 sequence ranking. However, Lu Jia had to do some other tests in the Radiant Sacred Hall over the next 2 days. Therefore, Lu Jia could not cook in the manner for the next few days. The mother of Bloodbath had taken over the cooking job in the past few days when Lu Jia was not around. The mother of Bloodbath didn't really want to cook in the manner. Instead, it planned to go out for a stroll on the streets for the next 2 days. He brought back the delicacies that he liked and shared them with the people in the manor. Thus, Lin Yuan was the only one left in the hall. Looking at this huge fish tank made of completely jade-textured red sandalwood, Lin Yuan could not help but feel a headache. He really did not know how he was going to fish them out of the red sandalwood longevity fish tank. However, at this moment, the bronze eye/flawless spirit-containing hibiscus at the top of the fish tank was growing more and more prosperous. Many of the bronze eye/flawless spirit-containing hibiscuses had been weakened by the massive spirit chi released by the 5 fortune ranches. It had advanced to bronze rank 2 or even 3. Although the spirit-containing hibiscuses bloomed in the morning and withered in the evening, it was currently noon. The flower bud of the spirit-containing hibiscus had just opened for a while. The flower was huge and beautiful. It had the artistic conception of, the lush green is quiet and tranquil, and the red dress is shallow and deep. During the day, there were large hibiscus flowers dancing with lustrous wings on the red sandalwood fish tank. At night, lustrous winged butterflies flapped their wings and played among the green leaves of the spirit-containing hibiscus. However, he suddenly realized that one of the lustrous winged butterflies was different from the others. The lustrous winged butterfly was a fae that flew in pairs. Those 98 lustrous winged butterflies were flying in a group, but only this lustrous winged butterfly was like a lonely patient. Usually, he would stay far away from the 98 flying lustrous winged butterflies. Moreover, those 98 lustrous winged butterflies seemed to be afraid of this lustrous winged butterfly. However, Lin Yuan did not care too much. He spent a lot of effort to open the mechanism Hu Quan had set on the red sandalwood longevity fish tank. The 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps had been personally nurtured by Lin Yuan. After seeing Lin Yuan, the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps were very friendly. The 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps were preparing to use their tails to greet Lin Yuan like in the spirit pool. However, since they were already in the red sandalwood longevity fish tank and not in the spirit pool, the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps were about to use their tails to greet Lin Yuan. The huge fish tails of the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps, which were almost as long as their bodies, brought about a splash that drenched Lin Yuan's entire body. If Lin Yuan had not stood firmly on the ladder, he would have been slapped to the ground by these 3 sudden splashes of water. Lin Yuan used his hand to wipe the splashes on his face and wet hair and could not help but feel very helpless. He looked at the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps angrily. He wanted to upgrade the 3 little fellas from Bronze X/Epic to Bronze X/Legend, but the 3 little fellas actually sent him to change his clothes with 3 splashes. Lin Yuan stored the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps in the diamond face storage box. He went down the ladder and shook his wrist. The amber button-shaped source-type source sand on his wrist turned into a few strands of yellow sand. These strands of yellow sand sucked up the large water stains on the ground. Then, the source sand turned into the shape of an amber button and stuck to Lin Yuan's diamond face storage box, which was also in the shape of an amber button. Not long after Lin Yuan fished up the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps, Ostrich Logistics delivered the wood-weaving house centipede and oath lily of the valley that Lin Yuan had purchased to Lin Yuan's mansion. Whether it was the wood-weaving house centipede or the oath lily of the valley, Lin Yuan had picked the best growth among the same grade and quality. In particular, this wood-weaving house centipede was very lively. Lin Yuan brought the bronze face storage box containing the wood-weaving house centipede and oath lily of the valley back to his room. Then, he entered the Spirit Lock spatial zone. The Spirit Lock spatial zone was still the same. It was just that the 2 completely jade-textured, crimson parasol wood shelves full of phoenix feathers and phoenix patterns. The surface of the 5 types of rare wood, which had been placed for nearly 10 days, had a certain degree of jade texturing. Under the extremely high spirit chi concentration in the Spirit Lock spatial zone, they were already faintly emitting a jade-textured luster. However, these rare wood that had already become jade-textured would need to be 5 times heavier to completely become jade-textured. Therefore, it would take at least another 20 days. When the gray crane species Fei saw that Lin Yuan had returned to the Spirit Lock spatial zone, it immediately stuck to him. It flapped its wings and used its small head to rub against Lin Yuan's hand that was hanging by the side of his leg. It was obvious that this little fellow was already used to staying in the Spirit Lock spatial zone for a night. Furthermore, this little fellow was playing very well with the wind speed rapid antelope in the Spirit Lock spatial zone and had obviously become good friends. Lin Yuan rubbed this little fellow's small head and sensed the state of its genetic model. Lin Yuan sighed. At this speed, this little fellow wanted to fully display its genetic model. He would probably have to wait until he finished participating in the Radiance 100 sequence test before it could more or less recover. The aquamarine elemental shellfish, Celestine elemental shellfish, and scorching elemental shellfish were all absorbing the massive and pure spiritual power in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. They were dutifully spitting out the elemental pearls. The floating island whale was also constantly absorbing the massive and pure water and chi elements produced from the elemental pearls. In addition, the massive and pure spiritual power was slowly developing. At that moment, Lin Yuan cut his palm again and used his blood to deepen the bond with the floating island whale. At the same time, he sensed the floating island whale's condition in the crystal eggshell. After carefully sensing the floating island whale's condition, Lin Yuan had a rough idea in his heart. Chapter 5, End of this chapter. Chapter 341. Even if Morbius grade did not increase, the floating island whale would probably be able to hatch from the crystal eggshell in June next year. Although the twin red pagoda's main flower had only nurtured the life-form sacrificial fire for over 10 days, Lin Yuan could clearly feel that the life-form sacrificial fire was constantly growing stronger. It seemed that the burning elemental shellfish's main flower's life-form sacrificial fire was still very powerful for the twin red pagoda's main flower. It seemed that the scorching elemental shellfish's life-form sacrificial fire, which contained a huge amount of fire elements, was still very powerful for the twin red pagoda's main flower. Lin Yuan had already given the matured life-form sacrificial fire to Endless Summer, so he hoped that this life-form sacrificial fire could mature quickly. Then, Lin Yuan began his goal of enhancing the phase this time. He first placed the 3 Dragon Phoenix landscape carps in a huge water tank in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. Then, he placed the huge water tank with the 3 Dragon Phoenix landscape carps on his breeding table. The 3 Dragon Phoenix landscape carps were now in excellent condition. They were much better than when Lin Yuan had just promoted them to bronze/epic, be it in terms of physical appearance or spirit. Moreover, their tail fins and wing fins were a bit longer than before. The wider tail fins and wing fins made the Dragon Phoenix landscape carps more ornamental. However, Lin Yuan also discovered something even more strange about these 3 Dragon Phoenix landscape carps. Although these 3 Dragon Phoenix landscape carps looked no different from before, Lin Yuan carefully sensed them now. But now that he sensed it carefully, he realized that while the Dragon bloodline and Phoenix bloodline were constantly rising, they were also assimilating with each other. This assimilation did not refer to devouring each other, but to accepting each other and slowly fusing into a whole. Lin Yuan had decided that after enhancing these 3 Dragon Phoenix landscape carps to legend, they would no longer be stuck at bronze and would start to evolve freely. After these 3 bronze/epic Dragon Phoenix landscape carps reached bronze X/legend, it should not take long for them to reach silver I/legend. It shouldn't take long for it to advance from bronze X/legend to silver I/legend. The Dragon Phoenix landscape carps had evolved from the myriad form carp. The myriad form carp's characteristic was that each time it advanced in grade, it would evolve to a certain extent. Therefore, when the Dragon Phoenix landscape carps evolved to the silver grade, there would definitely be a certain change. After evolving from the manifestation carp to the Dragon Phoenix landscape carp, its foundation had already been decided. However, he was still very much looking forward to the changes that might occur after the evolution of these 3 Dragon Phoenix landscape carps. Then, he took the bronze/epic Dragon's Mouth Orchid. At that moment, this bronze/epic Dragon's Mouth Orchid still looked no different from weeds because it had been plucked off by Lin Yuan previously. The flower bud on the agave orchid had also withered. However, when the Dragon's Mouth Orchid reached the legendary grade, it would naturally grow another stem. There will be another Dragon's Mouth Orchid on the stem. The normal I/normal wood weaving house centipede had also been enhanced to bronze X/epic. The wood weaving house centipede was about 20 centimeters long, and its dark green body had 100 legs. It was a multi-legged insect. It had to be said that this wood weaving house centipede was somewhat similar to the source-type spine goo that Cheng Rui had contracted. However, the wood weaving house centipede was a very docile insect species Fei. It only ate wood and did not have any aggressiveness. Even if you forced it into a corner, it was rare to hear that the wood weaving house centipede would attack spirit chi professionals when it was in self-defense. It could be considered the representative of "I'm ugly but very gentle" among insect species Feis. At that time, Lin Yuan had chosen to buy the bronze/flawless oath lily of the valley. It was not that there were no bronze/normal oath lilies of the valley for sale in the market at that time. It was because this bronze/flawless oath lily of the valley's flower branch looked very layered, and the layers were like the shape of a pagoda. It was also full of pure white bell-shaped oath lily of the valley. This pot was considered the most luxuriant and well-trimmed among the pots of oath lilies of the valley that Lin Yuan had seen. Therefore, Lin Yuan had bought this bronze/flawless oath lily of the valley. Since the oath lily of the valley was going to evolve into a legend fae, it was necessary to choose a good base. Lin Yuan upgraded this bronze/flawless oath lily of the valley to bronze/epic. He looked at the 6 bronze/epic faes in front of him and took a spirit chi crystal. Then, he used force to crush the spirit chi crystal. Morbius, which was on Lin Yuan's wrist, controlled the spirit chi crystal and divided it into 5 portions. It poured into the dragon's mouth orchid, the wood-weaving house centipede, and the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps. After the wood-weaving house centipede, the dragon's mouth orchid, and the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps absorbed the huge amount of pure spirit chi released after the spirit chi crystal was shattered, their quality quickly improved. Finally, after the wood-weaving house centipede, the dragon's mouth orchid, and the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps were upgraded to bronze/legend. Only then did Morbius inject the remaining spiritual power in the spirit chi crystal into the bronze/epic oath lily of the valley. As a result, this bronze/epic oath lily of the valley really lived up to expectations and evolved into a bronze/legend oath lily of the valley. Lin Yuan looked at the 6 bronze/legend faes in front of him and revealed a sunny smile. It was not that Lin Yuan was happy because of the preciousness of these 6 bronze/legend faes. It was because when these 6 bronze/epic faes evolved to legend, they actually gave Lin Yuan 2 surprises. The first surprise naturally came from the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps. Previously, in order to let the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps reach legend before letting them increase their grade, the dragon phoenix landscape carps had already reached legend. Therefore, Lin Yuan had been suppressing the evolution of the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps. Therefore, the dragon phoenix landscape carps had already accumulated a lot of spiritual power in their bodies. Now that the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps reached bronze X/legend, they actually evolved at the same time. The 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps evolving from bronze X to silver at the same time could only be considered a small surprise. But immediately after, the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps gave Lin Yuan an even bigger surprise. Because of Morbius' true data, after the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps evolved to silver, their names had changed. These 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps should no longer be called dragon phoenix landscape carps. 6th update seeking recommendation votes, monthly votes, Life's Passerby's 3rd update is done. Thank you for your support, Big Boss. End of this chapter. Chapter 342. At that moment, the 3 bronze X/legend dragon phoenix landscape carps were emitting a dazzling brilliance. Although this dazzling brilliance was only black and white, it was ink-like. However, the stone, grass, flower, and tree in the ink-like brilliance formed a house, a pavilion, a platform, and a pavilion. As for the house, the pavilion, the platform, and the pavilion, they formed a city. The city, the mountains, and the rivers formed a house, a pavilion, a platform, and a pavilion. The myriad of cities, mountains, and rivers formed a constantly changing ink-like world. Just as the rivers and mountains were dyed in ink, the ink-like world rose to the apex. The 3 bronze X/legend dragon phoenix landscape carps, which were evolving towards silver, emitted a dazzling brilliance that formed an ink world. It changed in an instant. The originally black and white world seemed to be injected with 8 kinds of bright and beautiful colors. These 8 kinds of bright and beautiful colors seemed to cater to the most pure colors in nature. Every color seemed to be able to reach the origin of all things. Yellow, red, blue, green, purple, orange, and black. The 8 colors of the universe were immeasurable, and the 8 colors of the formless gave birth to longevity. The 8 colors were immediately bright and beautiful, and the myriad world seemed to have evolved tens of thousands of years of vitality in an instant. Although Lin Yuan could only see the rivers and mountains flowing under the 8 colors, he still couldn't see the dragon phoenix landscape carps evolving. However, when Lin Yuan saw the dragon phoenix landscape carps evolve a different kind of shock arose in his heart. With the dragon and phoenix bloodlines, solidify the eternal life of mountains and rivers. The dragon phoenix landscape carps had already changed their name to mountain river eternal life carps. After a long time, the Bronze X/Legend Dragon Phoenix Landscape Carps finally completed their evolution to Silver I/Legend Mountain River Eternal Life Carps. At that moment, the halo of the 8 bright and beautiful rivers and mountains had completely dissipated. Lin Yuan finally saw what the Silver I/Legend Mountain River Eternal Life Carps looked like. The Mountain River Eternal Life Carps were actually not much different from the previous Dragon Phoenix Landscape Carps. However, the Mountain River Eternal Life Carps and the Dragon Phoenix Landscape Carps gave Lin Yuan a completely different feeling. If the Dragon Phoenix Landscape Carps gave Lin Yuan the feeling that they were praising the beauty of mountains and rivers. In that case, the Mountain River Eternal Life Carp gave him the feeling that it was guarding the splendid land's fortune. Lin Yuan took a closer look at the Mountain River Eternal Life Carp, which had 8 bright colors instead of the ink color, and his pupils constricted. The Mountain River Eternal Life Carp's myriad miles of rivers and mountains painting had become even more complicated. As the saying goes, the 4 directions welcome the 8 colors, and the 8 colors give birth to 6 blessings. Aside from the fact that the myriad phenomena on the mountain and river eternal life carp's back were moving faster, there were also many more fortune and longevity runes. The happy bat longevity mark appeared on the fish's forehead, signifying a flood of good fortune. The fish's eyes gave birth to the longevity mark, implying that it was bright and clear. The fins had the pine deer longevity pattern, implying that the pine deer and deer lived together in spring. The belly of the fish was marked with a golden pomegranate, which meant that the pomegranate would blossom into 100 seeds. The fish scales bore the mark of an orchid, implying longevity of an orchid. Jiang Wu's longevity mark was carved on the fish's tail, implying boundless longevity. The everlasting rivers and mountains rune fell on the back of the fish, revealing its stature. Lin Yuan carefully distinguished and found that there were a total of 6 types of fortune and longevity words, which just happened to imply good fortune. The 6 types of fortune and longevity runes on the mountain river eternal life carp's back and the 8 colors of mountains and rivers flowed like a kind of immeasurable blessing. Yan Shan He's lifespan, immeasurable blessings. The mountain river eternal life carp might seem abnormally crowded in this narrow water tank. One simply couldn't see the mountain river eternal life carp's excellent posture. However, even in this narrow water tank, just the ripples created by the mountain river eternal life carp's swaying tail and fin contrasted with the magnificent colors on its body, as though it could bloom thousands of fragrant flowers. Just one flower would make one reminisce for a long time. Lin Yuan looked at the 3 mountain river eternal life carps and thought to himself. If the previous 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps could be considered superior auspicious signs, then these 3 mountain river eternal life carps could be considered supreme grade auspicious signs at the very least. It could even be said that they had already surpassed the auspicious signs category. Lin Yuan couldn't bear to see these 3 mountain river eternal life carps squeezed in this water tank, so he simply stored them in the diamond face storage box. When it was time to go out, he would put them back into the red sandalwood longevity fish tank made of completely jade-textured red sandalwood. This time, he had enhanced these 6 phase from bronze/epic to bronze/legend and brought a total of 2 surprises to Lin Yuan. However, compared to the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps evolution from bronze to silver to mountain river eternal life carps, the remaining small surprise seemed insignificant. However, this small surprise would probably make Hu Quan so happy that he wouldn't sleep for 3 days and 3 nights. As a tool, Hu Quan's happiness wouldn't diminish even if he worked for another 10 hours every day to celebrate for a year. As a tool, Hu Quan's happiness wouldn't diminish even if he worked for another 10 hours every day to celebrate for a year. This was because the wood-weaving house centipede that Hu Quan had given to him had mutated when it had been enhanced to Bronze X/Legend. Of course, this mutation couldn't be called evolution. This mutation referred to the wood-weaving house centipede's wood-weaving silk sac at its tail splitting into two. The wood-weaving house centipede's silk sac splitting was similar to Lin Yuan's succulent jasmine lily's colony growth. The colony growth mutation caused the jasmine lily to change from a single flower head to a multiple flower head. Although the total healing energy in the jasmine lily's body did not change, it could transform single-target healing into group healing. It could also automatically switch between single-target healing and group healing according to Lin Yuan's will. The wood-weaving house centipede's silk sac splitting was the same. The wood-weaving house centipede could eat wood and turn it into a liquid state in its body. Finally, the silk sac at the wood-weaving house centipede's tail would eject tough threads made of wood. This was because the wood-weaving house centipede's speed of decomposing wood did not change. Therefore, even if the wood-weaving house centipede's silk sac split into two, the total amount of wood threads that could be ejected would still remain the same. However, the wood-weaving house centipede's silk sac splitting into two was not as simple as saving time and efficiency for a spirit craftsman. The double threads ejected from the two silk sacs could allow a spirit craftsman to use double the number of threads to create. Not only could it save more effort for the spirit craftsman, but it could also increase the possibility of products made from wood. This could be used for a full month. Moreover, as long as the wood-weaving house centipede's grade was high enough, the efficiency of decomposing wood would be faster. In fact, to a certain extent, the wood-weaving house centipede's silk sac splitting mutation could indeed allow a spirit craftsman's ability to produce wood to achieve double the effect. Hu Quan, who was already a top-notch tool, had become even more valiant. As long as Hu Quan fused the Bronze X/Legend wood-weaving house centipede with the willpower rune and the fantasy breed jade saber mantis from before, he would have two fantasy breed phase. This way, Hu Quan would have two fantasy breed phase, and his spirit craftsman standard had long reached the standard of a class 5 spirit craftsman. As long as he went to the Spirit Craftsman Association for certification, Hu Quan would be a true class 5 spirit craftsman. The Mountain and River Eternal Life Carp wrote several times and finally chose this. I hope everyone likes it. Asking for tickets today's first time is even better. End of this chapter. Chapter 343. As for the Bronze/Epic Oath Lily of the Valley, its appearance did not change much after evolving to Bronze/Legend. However, the pagoda-shaped oath lily of the valley's pure white bell-shaped flowers bloomed. The moment it was promoted to legend, a layer of lustrous white flowing light appeared. It was as if every single pure white bell-shaped flower had lit up in an instant. Coupled with the pagoda-shaped plant's shape, it looked like a tree of bell-shaped nephrite. It gave off a feeling of riches and honor. The flowing light in the pure white bell-shaped flower was the reason why the oath lily of the valley could carry oaths. Or it could be said that the rippling light was actually a kind of curse in essence. The legend oath lily of the valley's flower was a container to store oaths and also a curse to seal the willpower rune of the betrayer. Lin Yuan did not pay much attention to this Bronze/Legend oath lily of the valley and kept it in the amber button-shaped diamond face storage box. This Bronze/Legend oath lily of the valley was not something Lin Yuan used often, so there was no need to put it in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. The resources in the Spirit Lock spatial zone were already tight, and putting it in the Spirit Lock spatial zone would undoubtedly take up space. He just had to buy an area on Star Web to build his faction. He could place this Bronze/Legend oath lily of the valley in his faction's room. There was only one Bronze/Epic Fae left that Lin Yuan had yet to check. The last Fae, which was the Dragon's Mouth Orchid that had been promoted from Bronze/Epic to Legend, had truly broadened Lin Yuan's horizons. Lin Yuan did not know what changes would occur when the dragon's mouth orchid evolved from epic to legend. For example, when the dragon's mouth orchid bloomed, the dragon's mouth orchid would be light blue when it was at the perfect rank, but when it reached the epic rank, it would be dark blue. However, Lin Yuan did not expect the dragon's mouth orchid to actually turn completely black when it reached legend. A huge black dragon's mouth orchid flower was much bigger than Lin Yuan's palm. The dark blue dragon's mouth orchid flower's stamen had a layer of shiny scale-like wood structure. Now, this black bronze/legend dragon's mouth orchid flower's stamen looked like bright diamonds. This was a sign of wood crystallization. As early as when the dragon's mouth orchid had been promoted to legend, Lin Yuan had smelled its scent. However, the smell emitted by the legendary dragon god orchid was already somewhat fragrant and stinky. The smell was so fragrant that it smelled bad, and there was a taste that was as stimulating as liquor. This smell was the unique smell of dragon species phase. Lin Yuan finally broke off the huge black legend dragon's mouth orchid from the dragon's mouth orchid stem. It had to be said that this ink-black legendary quality agave orchid was quite sturdy. Previously, using a spirit chi crystal to enhance these 6 bronze/epic phase to legend was just a small matter. Now, he had to truly enhance his own fey. Lin Yuan wanted to enhance the bronze X/legend spirit gather goldfish, Blackie, that Morbius had spirit locked. Lin Yuan walked to the side of the spirit pool and found that Blackie was leisurely eating the butterfly shell flowers at the bottom of the pool. After Blackie reached bronze, the butterfly shell flowers that Lin Yuan fed it had also increased by a grade. The butterfly shell flowers that Lin Yuan had fed Blackie were just low-grade butterfly shells that lived in the shallow sea and were carved from them. The butterfly shell flowers that Lin Yuan fed Blackie were high-grade butterfly shells that were produced in the deep sea and were carved from a small number of high-grade ones. Although it could not be said that high-grade butterfly shells were priceless in the market, they were still very expensive. Under normal circumstances, very few people would be willing to use high-grade deep-sea butterfly shells to let fays eat casually. After all, although the flower could stimulate the dragon species bloodline in the fae, the effect of stimulating the bloodline was mainly nurturing and auxiliary. However, the effect of activating the bloodline was mainly based on nurturing, and there wouldn't be any effect in the short term. This was also why Lin Yuan had been feeding Blackie so many butterfly shell flowers. However, when Blackie had stimulated its dragon species bloodline, it had used 3 drops of dragon species phase essence blood for the first time. The second time, he planned to use the legend dragon's mouth orchid flowers. However, he did not feel that it was a waste for Blackie to eat the butterfly shell flower carved from the deep-sea butterfly shells. Because of the accumulation of the past few months, Lin Yuan could sense that the trace of dragon species bloodline hidden in the spirit gather goldfish's bodies was becoming more and more active after eating the butterfly shell flowers carved from the expensive deep-sea butterfly shells. However, if one stared at the spirit gather goldfish Blackie every day, they wouldn't be able to see it. However, if he were to look at it once every 1 or 2 months, he would still be able to see that faint dragon species phase pressure constantly accumulating in Blackie's body. It was as if it was waiting for a complete transformation. Lin Yuan looked at the huge black legend dragon's mouth orchid flower in his hand with great anticipation. Lin Yuan was not prepared to let Blackie immediately undergo a drastic transformation into a dragon species fae after eating this dragon's mouth orchid flower. However, this legend dragon's mouth orchid flower would definitely allow Blackie to comprehensively cleanse its bloodline and greatly strengthen its trace of dragon species fae bloodline. It might even completely suppress the fish's comprehended bloodline. It would allow the dragon species phase bloodline to occupy the dominant position in Blackie's body. This was because Lin Yuan did not know the effect of the legend dragon's mouth orchid flower. In fact, Lin Yuan still placed the treasure of Blackie's evolution into a dragon species fae on the moment it evolved into a fantasy breed fae. Blackie sensed Lin Yuan's arrival and immediately swam to the side of the spirit pool. It used its black velvet peony-like tail to whip the spirit pool's surface, creating splashes as it greeted Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan watched as Blackie used its tail to whip the water. He felt that this spirit-gather goldfish and the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps greeted each other in the same way. Lin Yuan thought that if he were to lie at the side of the pool, he might get wet from the splashes from Blackie's whipping. At that moment, Lin Yuan fished out the 5 fortune ranches, which had evolved to bronze, from the spirit pool. He also placed the female 5 fortune ranches, which Blackie had a good time with, in the water tank where the 3 mountain river eternal life carps were stored. This was the moment when Blackie would once again stimulate its dragon species bloodline. Today's second update, end of this chapter. Chapter 344. Lin Yuan had now completely emptied the spirit pool. At this moment, only Blackie, the spirit-gather goldfish, was swimming freely in the spirit pool. When Lin Yuan saw Blackie's joyful expression, he felt a slight headache. Although Blackie, the spirit-gather goldfish, was considered an animal, its IQ was not much lower than that of the jasmine lily. Blackie might look like it understood humans, but it had a silly and cheerful personality. In fact, he was just a silly and cheerful person who seemed to understand everything. In fact, he only knew how to spit bubbles in the spirit pool when he had nothing to do. This was like a student who didn't know anything, but when the teacher was lecturing, he would nod, ponder, and interact with the teacher with an expression of sudden enlightenment. In fact, in his mind, he was thinking about something as simple as eating potato chips and drinking cola on a big bed. This made Lin Yuan overestimate Blackie's intelligence. Previously, Lin Yuan had always thought that there was something between Blackie and the female 5 fortune ranchu. But then, he suddenly recalled that his spirit-gather goldfish, Blackie, was also a female fish. Later, Lin Yuan realized that Blackie did not have any other feelings for the female 5 fortune ranchu. However, the size of the female 5 fortune ranchu was about the same as the spirit-gather goldfish, Blackie. The spirit-gather goldfish, Blackie, treated the female 5 fortune ranchu as its playmate. At that moment, Lin Yuan issued an order to Blackie. Then, he threw the Black Legend Dragon's Mouth Orchid flower into the spirit pool. This was the moment when Blackie stimulated its dragon species bloodline transformation for the second time. Fish fays were not smart. Even high-grade fish fays were not very smart as long as they did not become myth breeds. This was also why there was a saying that fish only had 7 seconds of memory. However, if Blackie could evolve into a dragon species fay, its intelligence would increase by a level. When it became a dragon species fay, its intelligence would increase by a level. Blackie followed Lin Yuan's order and swam toward the legend dragon's mouth orchid flower. Just as Blackie swallowed the legend dragon's mouth orchid flower, Lin Yuan could feel the dragon species pressure in Blackie's body. Lin Yuan could feel Blackie's dragon species pressure, which had been accumulating power and waiting to be unleashed, erupting in an instant. Although Xiaofan was already a spirit-gather goldfish, it still had the appearance of a spirit-siphon goldfish. However, the moment the dragon's might erupted, the spirit-gather goldfish, Blackie, immediately sank to the bottom of the spirit pool under the intense pain. Then, the spirit-gather goldfish, Blackie, began to churn at the bottom of the spirit pool. He kept slamming his body against the walls of the spirit pool. The spirit-gather goldfish, Blackie, hit the wall of the spiritual pool with great force. The spirit-gather goldfish Blackie's black scales were considered hard. It didn't suffer much damage when it hit the wall of the spirit pool for the first few times. However, under the unbearable pain, the spirit-gather goldfish slammed into the spirit pool's wall again and again. Slowly, the black scales on Blackie's body loosened. Even the fins and tail of the fish had been battered by the crazy collisions. Many parts of the spirit-gather goldfish, Xiaofan's fins and tail were already broken. Through this opening, Lin Yuan could even see the golden metal disc filled with energy ores and the deep-sea butterfly shell flowers at the bottom of the spirit pool. Although Blackie didn't have high intelligence, a contractor and Fei could sense each other's feelings and thoughts. Just like now, Lin Yuan could completely feel the pain that came from the depths of Blackie's soul. It was a process where all the cells in the body were destroyed and reborn under the stimulation of the bloodline. Lin Yuan naturally felt heartache for Blackie's pain. However, Lin Yuan also knew that it was useless for him to feel heartache. It couldn't reduce a trace of the pain that Blackie had to endure. The edge of a treasured sword was sharpened, and the fragrance of plum blossoms was gone. If a person wanted to learn knowledge and become the best person, they would need to work hard for thousands of days and nights. Moreover, Blackie's racial bloodline had undergone a qualitative transformation. The scarlet blood in Blackie's body flowed into the spirit pool from the broken scales. It was immediately broken down into spirit chi by the spirit pool and injected into the spirit lock spatial zone. Had it not been for Blackie's bulging eyes that were not damaged, Lin Yuan would never have recognized that this bloody fish Fei in the spirit pool was actually Blackie. No matter what, Lin Yuan would never have recognized that this bloody fish Fei in the spirit pool was actually Blackie. The spirit gather goldfish, Blackie, no longer had any scales on its body. It was using its softest flesh to hit the walls of the spirit pool. The mangled spirit gather goldfish, Blackie, was still crazily hitting the spirit pool's wall to vent the intense pain that was surging all over its body. Each hit would definitely bring up a handful of captivating red blood. Lin Yuan quietly accompanied Blackie by the spirit pool and walked the most difficult path of a fish's life. For Blackie, the legendary dragon's mouth orchid would have been a great blessing if it had not been discovered by chance in the depths of the endless forest. Since it was a blessing, it had to endure no matter how hard it was. It was said that a golden unicorn was not a fish in a pond and would transform into a dragon when encountering a storm. At this moment, the legend dragon's mouth orchid was Blackie's storm. As Blackie's contractor, Lin Yuan had always been standing by the spirit pool to accompany Blackie. He silently observed the second transformation of the spirit siphon goldfish's dragon species bloodline after its first awakening into a spirit gather goldfish. Lin Yuan clenched his fist tightly. Watching his contracted phase growth and transformation was so painful, he felt heartache and blissful at the same time. Once this path was crossed, Blackie wouldn't have such huge bumps in the future. Blackie might still be a bloody mess, but the captivating red blood that flowed out slowly had a hint of gold. However, Blackie's bulb-like eyes seemed to have left Lin Yuan and were constantly squeezing toward the top of Blackie's head. The spot where Blackie's eyes used to be had a hint of gold. Furthermore, this gold color was constantly deepening. When the place where the eyes used to be had turned completely dark gold, the golden light that rose up from where the eyes used to be was completely dark gold. Blackie immediately quieted down and sank to the bottom of the spirit pool. It lay at the bottom of the spirit pool and didn't seem to have any strength at all. Lin Yuan observed carefully and realized that a thin layer of tough skin had already grown on the surface of Blackie's body. Then, the two big eyes on the top of Little Black's head, which had been separated from the spirit gather goldfish, finally formed two small horns that looked dark gold with black color. Third update button is sick. The latest update may be a little slow, but I guarantee 3 updates every day. End of this chapter. Chapter 345. Immediately after, Blackie's body was covered in black crystal-like scales with dark golden patterns. Layer by layer, they grew on Blackie's body. Blackie's body was also constantly elongating while trembling violently. Previously, Blackie was only 50 centimeters long. Now, the length of the spirit gather goldfish, Blackie, had doubled to 1 meter long. Blackie's body wasn't as round as before. Instead, it had become slender and powerful. However, the black peony flower-like tail didn't change. At that moment, the black peony flower-like tail wasn't as elegant as before. Instead, a layer of bone-like structure grew inside, supporting the tail completely. Right at this moment, in the spirit pool, a pair of dark golden eyes appeared where Little Black's eyes had previously been pushed to the top of its head, where the crystalline keratin had formed. It was said to be the finishing touch. Now that Lin Yuan saw Blackie's evolution process, he finally witnessed it. Previously, Blackie's round and protruding eyes were like two big light bulbs, making it look rather cute. But now, Blackie's eyes were long and slender dragon eyes, which had the unique prestige and coldness of a Wyrm species Fey. After evolving at the bottom of the pool, Blackie had exhausted all its strength. The evolution just now was like going through the gates of hell for Blackie. However, Blackie knew that Lin Yuan had been accompanying it at the spirit pool. Blackie, who was at the bottom of the spirit pool, swung its tail and leaped out of the water, landing in Lin Yuan's embrace. Blackie was now 1 meter long, and its weight wasn't light. However, Lin Yuan, who had been a C-rank spirit chi professional for a period of time, had no problem carrying Blackie, which weighed 15 to 20 kilograms. The corners of Lin Yuan's mouth could not help but twitch when he felt Blackie's silly intimacy in his arms. The clothes that he had just changed out of after entering the Spirit Lock spatial zone were completely wet again. Lin Yuan used the Spirit Gather goldfish, Blackie, to circulate his spiritual power to sense Blackie's changes. Lin Yuan could clearly feel that Blackie's physique had undergone an earth-shattering improvement. At the same time, although the Spirit Gather goldfish, Blackie, was still dumb, its intelligence had improved greatly. Previously, Xiaofan was the kind of student who pretended to be knowledgeable. Now, Little Black belonged to the category of students who only knew a little. At that moment, Lin Yuan used Morbius True Data to check Blackie's attributes. He found that Little Black was no longer called a Spirit Gather goldfish, but a Spirit Attract ichthyosaur. Upon seeing this name, Lin Yuan's eyes shrank. He had never expected the legend dragon's mouth orchid to have such a powerful effect on stimulating the dragon species Fey's bloodline. At that moment, Blackie was no longer considered a fish Fey. If Blackie, the Spirit Gather goldfish, activated its bloodline, it would be called a spirit-drawing dragonfish under True Data. In that case, Blackie's body was still dominated by the fish Fey's bloodline. However, Blackie's name under True Data was now Spirit-Drawing Ichthyosaur. This meant that Blackie's bloodline was now dominated by a dragon species Fey's bloodline. It could even be said that there was not much of the fish Fey's bloodline left in its body. Lin Yuan was pleasantly surprised by such a discovery. This meant that when Blackie became a fantasy breed, it would evolve from a fish species Fey to a dragon species Fey. It was already a matter of time before it became a fantasy breed. At that time, Blackie would no longer be an ichthyosaur but a true flood dragon. Now, if he wanted Blackie to become a fantasy breed, what he lacked was a suitable willpower rune. However, Lin Yuan still did not feel like he could comprehend Blackie's willpower rune. Previously, when Endless Summer had used the Enlightenment Law rune to swear to become his protector, Lin Yuan had vaguely felt a trace of inexplicable comprehension in his mind. However, that comprehension was simply too faint, so Lin Yuan could not figure out what it was. Even if that comprehension was completely comprehended and formed into a willpower rune. Lin Yuan felt that this kind of comprehended willpower rune should not be suitable for Blackie. Therefore, he still had no clue how Blackie could become a fantasy breed. However, after Blackie stimulated the trace of dragon species bloodline hidden in its body and evolved into a spirit-drawing ichthyosaur, Lin Yuan found that Blackie's exclusive skill, Spirit Chi Imprint, was almost twice as fast as usual. After Blackie's exclusive skill, Spirit Chi Imprint, evolved into a spirit-drawing ichthyosaur, Lin Yuan found that Blackie's exclusive skill, Spirit Chi Imprint, was almost twice as fast as usual. After Blackie's Spirit Gather goldfish evolved into a spirit-drawing ichthyosaur, its exclusive skill, Spirit Chi Imprint, had undergone obvious changes. Fey name, Spirit Drawing Ichthyosaur. Fey species, Ichthyosaur/Flood Dragon. Fey grade, Bronze, 10/10. Fey type, Water. Fey quality, Legend abilities. Frowny Face Spirit Injection. Restore a certain amount of spiritual power in one go and slowly recover the lost spiritual power. Exclusive skill. Frowny Face Spirit Chi Imprint. The spirit chi released by the body is not released into the environment but stored in the spirit chi imprint. It can also guide a small amount of spirit chi released by other dragon species phase that do not exceed the body's grade and inject it into the spirit chi imprint. The spirit chi imprint will be branded on the contractor, and the contractor can actively release the spirit chi stored in the spirit chi imprint. Upon seeing this change, Lin Yuan couldn't help but size up the spirit pool in the spirit lock spatial zone. From this change, Lin Yuan saw a very feasible direction. It had to be said that when Lin Yuan had first nurtured the elite spirit siphon goldfish in the spirit pool, those spirit siphon goldfish had been nurtured in a very short period of time, and they had indeed earned a lot of savings for Lin Yuan's initial stage. However, that was when Lin Yuan was just starting out. Now, these elite spirit siphon goldfish that were nurtured in the spirit lock spatial zone could bring Lin Yuan a negligible income. In fact, when comparing the elite spirit siphon goldfish and the silver usnias were in higher demand. After all, the spirit siphon goldfish were just items that assisted in cultivation, while the usnias produced were necessities in life. Therefore, Lin Yuan had the intention of not using the spirit pool to nurture the elite spirit siphon goldfish and selling them in his purchase with no loss store. Lin Yuan had been providing elite spirit siphon goldfish to Zhou Jiasen's store. However, if Lin Yuan was willing to exchange the elite spirit siphon goldfish for silver usnias, Zhou Jiasen would probably jump for joy. Now that the spirit siphon ichthyosaur's exclusive skill, the spirit chi imprint, Lin Yuan felt that he could make good use of the spirit pool. Chapter 1, End of this chapter. Chapter 346. The spirit drawing ichthyosaur could guide the spirit chi released by dragon species phase within a certain range into the spirit chi imprint. Even if it was only a trace, Lin Yuan had to strive for it. This was because every trace of spirit chi in the spirit chi imprint was Lin Yuan's absolute trump card. It could be said that there were almost no dragon species phase that could release spirit chi. Even if there were some precious dragon species phase that could release spirit chi, their size would not be small. Therefore, the most suitable phase for Lin Yuan were the I-spirit siphon goldfish with a trace of dragon species bloodline. Lin Yuan could nurture these I-spirit siphon goldfish with a trace of dragon species bloodline, just like how he had nurtured Blackie to evolve from a spirit siphon goldfish to a spirit gather goldfish. At that time, these I-spirit siphon goldfish would stimulate the trace of dragon species bloodline in their bodies. The spirit drawing ichthyosaur could use its exclusive skill to increase the spirit chi in the spirit chi imprint faster. Lin Yuan carefully sensed the range of the spirit chi released by the spirit drawing ichthyosaur's exclusive skill to guide other dragon species phase. He found that the range was actually very small, not even half the size of the spirit pool. However, Lin Yuan did not mind. As Blackie evolved into a fantasy breed, the range would get bigger and bigger. After Morbius grade increased, the spirit pool's area would also get bigger, just enough to satisfy Blackie's constantly expanding range. There were many colors of the I-spirit siphon goldfish, and the most common was red. However, Lin Yuan planned to choose black for all the I-spirit siphon goldfish that he would carefully nurture and activate their dragon species bloodline in the future. This way, the spirit pool in the spirit lock spatial zone would have a hint of the ink dragon pool. After Lin Yuan and Blackie got close for a while, Lin Yuan let Blackie nourish itself in the spirit pool. Although Blackie's bloodline had undergone a qualitative transformation, Lin Yuan and Blackie were close for a while. Lin Yuan let Blackie nourish itself in the spirit pool. Blackie's current mental state was not good. The pain it had just experienced would not disappear because of the transformation of its bloodline. Therefore, Blackie still needed some time to nourish itself before it could recover to its best state. Blackie's dragon species Fey bloodline was already in the dominant position, and it was not as powerful as Blackie. Therefore, when he nurtured Blackie in the future, he could feed it butterfly shell flowers carved from deep-sea butterfly shells to nourish its bloodline. He could also feed Blackie some dragon species Fey essence blood from time to time. He had not dared to feed little black dragon species essence blood because he was afraid that its dragon species bloodline would be too thin. He had rashly used a dragon species Fey's essence blood to strengthen Blackie. It was very likely that the trace of dragon species Fey bloodline in Blackie's body would not be able to suppress the energy in the essence blood. However, the dragon species Fey bloodline concentration in Blackie's body was already strong enough. Dragon species Fey's bloodlines were divided into ancient dragons and flood dragons. As for the ancient dragon species and the flood dragon species, no matter which bloodline evolved to a higher level, they could be called the main dragon species. Among the ancient dragon species and flood dragon species Feys, flood dragon species Feys were the rarest. Therefore, it was not easy for Lin Yuan to feed Blackie the flood dragon species Fey's essence blood that it could consume. Blackie might have reached legend quality, but it was still a bronze Fey after all. If there was a silver flood dragon species Fey's essence blood to feed Blackie, it would be the most suitable. However, most flood dragon species Fey's grades were relatively high. The spirit-drawing ichthyosaur, Blackie, was a complete accident. If not for the legend dragon's mouth orchid, the flood dragon species bloodline in Blackie's body would not be able to reach its current level. However, silver flood dragon species Fey's essence blood was also very rare. Where was Lin Yuan going to look for it? He could not possibly wait for the bronze/legend dragon's mouth orchid to bloom another dragon's mouth orchid 4 months later. He would nurture another silver flood dragon species Fey and use its essence blood to feed Blackie. Putting aside whether Lin Yuan could use the dragon's mouth orchid to nurture another silver flood dragon species Fey. Even if he could, Lin Yuan would not do so. Therefore, this silver flood dragon species Fey's essence blood became the 100 mid-grade strange flames that Lin Yuan had exchanged for with the 10 flower brocade pearls. It was his next target for leaks. Lin Yuan was about to store the wood-weaving house centipede into the diamond Fey storage box and leave the spirit lock spatial zone when he discovered something. He did not know when this bronze/legend wood-weaving house centipede had fought with the crane species Fey that had yet to fully develop its genetic model. It was the little gray fellow that was confronting it. Lin Yuan understood what was going on at a glance. He had been accompanying Blackie to purify its bloodline and had not noticed that the wood-weaving house centipede had designs on the cinnabar sweet osmanthus. The phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree was obviously more delicious than the cinnabar sweet osmanthus for the wood-weaving house centipede. However, the wood-weaving house centipede did not dare to have designs on the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree. Chimey, which was lying in the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's nest, was purifying its bloodline and improving its quality. Just the strange flames sealed in the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's branches could make the bronze X/legend wood-weaving house centipede feel a fatal danger. At that moment, among the 130 golden leaves sealed with mid-grade strange flames at the top of the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's treetop, the golden flames in more than 30 golden leaves had been absorbed by the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree and Chimey. However, the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree had released any mid-grade strange flames. They could burn the bronze X/legend wood-weaving house centipede to ashes. Therefore, the wood-weaving house centipede had set its sights on the cinnabar sweet osmanthus. However, the little gray fellow had long regarded the cinnabar sweet osmanthus as its nest. A little guy who had never felt warmth since he was born would risk his life to protect all the warmth he could feel. Therefore, the little gray fellow confronted the bronze X/legend wood-weaving house centipede. The wood-weaving house centipede was docile by nature, and the gold wind speed rapid antelope had been guarding it. Therefore, the wood-weaving house centipede had not made any moves to attack. Although this little gray fellow looked big, it was only a normal I/normal Fey that had yet to fully develop its genetic model. Lin Yuan looked at this little fellow's fierce appearance and went forward to put the wood-weaving house centipede into the Fey storage box. When the little gray fellow saw that Lin Yuan had helped it chase away the bad guy, it trotted toward him. When the little gray fellow saw that Lin Yuan had helped it chase away the bad guy, it trotted toward him. It used its small head and neck to rub against Lin Yuan's palm. Lin Yuan rubbed the little gray fellow's head and said, "Be good, don't be afraid. Gray is the bravest." When he had left the Spirit Lock spatial zone last night, Lin Yuan had given this little fellow a name. When he had left the Spirit Lock spatial zone last night, Lin Yuan had given this little fellow a name. When Lin Yuan first saw the little fellow, its entire body was covered in dust. Lin Yuan thought that he might as well call it Gray. Second chapter, end of this chapter. Chapter 347. Gray listened to Lin Yuan's words as if it understood something. Although it did not know what Lin Yuan was talking about, this gray little fellow was extremely dependent on Lin Yuan, who had saved it. Even if Gray had not signed a contract with Lin Yuan yet, it could still clearly feel Lin Yuan's kindness and love. Lin Yuan placed Gray on the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's branch and played with it for a while. Then, he said, "Gray, I'll come to see you again later. I'll bring you some tang fish to eat. Gray, I'll come to see you later. I'll bring you some tang fish to eat." He was also used to communicating with Fays the same way he treated his human friends. Lin Yuan was also used to communicating with Fays the same way he treated his human friends. It was also because of Lin Yuan's respectful way of communicating with Fays. In the 2 years since he had started raising Genius. Even if Genius's foundation was not good, after 2 years, Genius would be more intelligent than ordinary 100 questions beasts. Lin Yuan was not sure what species this gray little fellow was, but it was a crane species Fey after all. For crane species Feys, their favorite food was tang fish. This little fellow was now recovering its genetic model and growing its body. In addition to the huge and pure spiritual power in the Spirit Lock spatial zone, nutrition was also indispensable. After leaving the Spirit Lock spatial zone, Lin Yuan immediately went to change a set of clothes. Previously, the spirit-drawing dragonfish had jumped into Lin Yuan's arms and wet his clothes. Although his clothes were no longer so wet due to Lin Yuan's body temperature. Although his clothes were not so wet due to Lin Yuan's body temperature, it was really uncomfortable to wear wet clothes. After leaving the room, Lin Yuan saw a small basket at the door with Wen Yu's carefully written faction plan and suggestions. He picked up the plan and suggestions written by Wen Yu and read them carefully. Wen Yu, Lu Jia, and Lin Yuan had lived together in Lin Yuan's mansion. Now, there were Hu Quan, the mother of Bloodbath, and Endless Summer. The people living in Lin Yuan's mansion included young men, young women, middle-aged men, plants, and insects. In a big family, respecting each other's privacy was the minimum respect and care. Therefore, when entering each other's rooms, they would knock on the door. If no one answered after knocking, they would put the prepared things in the basket at the door. The baskets at the door were carved by Hu Quan from all kinds of completely jade-textured wood, and the remaining large pieces were pieced together skillfully. Each basket made of various jade-textured wood fragments was like an exquisite work of art. Lin Yuan stood at the door and looked at Wen Yusen's development and plan for the faction. Just like that, he watched for an entire hour. The more Lin Yuan watched, the more he realized that she had abandoned her previous sense of superiority when analyzing the major factions. Therefore, he had a very clear analysis of the major forces. Back then, when they came out of the private auction of the King-class powerhouse team, Lin Fan had been stunned for a while. From Gao Feng's words, Wen Yu knew that Gao Feng came from the Gao family in Wind Mist City. From then on, he knew that she knew all the major factions very well. Now, it seemed that Wen Yu's understanding of the major forces could no longer be described as understanding. According to the 7 to 8 thick pages of analysis on the various forces, Wang Chang's expression changed drastically. For each force, Wen Yu clearly summarized the advantages and disadvantages of each force in one sentence. One could say that Wen Yu was a walking encyclopedia of the various major powers. Wen Yu's expertise happened to be Lin Yuan's weakness. It could be said that Wen Yu's ability just made up for Lin Yuan's shortcomings. After Lin Yuan finished reading Wen Yu's private faction development and plan, he walked up the golden bell-wood spiral staircase and arrived at Wen Yu's door. He walked up the golden wooden spiral staircase and arrived at Wen Yu's door. Soon, Wen Yu pushed open the door and walked out. She saw that it was Lin Yuan and that he was holding the private faction development and suggestions that she had written for the second time. When he saw that it was Lin Yuan and that he was holding the proposal for the development of his faction, which he had written for the second time. "Young master, what do you think of what I wrote this time?" Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan revealed a sunny smile on his face and replied, "Young master, what do you think of what I wrote this time?" Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan revealed a sunny smile on his face and replied, "It's great this time. Your understanding of other factions happens to be in the direction that I'm not good at." Upon hearing that, Wen Yu's face also bloomed with a heartfelt smile. At that moment, Wen Yu suddenly felt that she could finally help Lin Yuan. Hu Quan had already taken a nap and had his liver replenished. After mending his liver, Hu Quan had already started making all kinds of exquisite things downstairs. Lin Yuan built his faction on Star Web, although he did not plan to do so in the outside world. However, he still had to design the faction's internal space. However, he was not in a hurry to design the faction's internal space. He thought about giving the Bronze X/Legend Wood Weaving House Centipede to Hu Quan in a few days. After letting Hu Quan contract this Bronze X/Legend Wood Weaving House Centipede and promote it to a fantasy breed, the Wood Weaving House Centipede became a fantasy breed. It would undoubtedly be much more convenient for Hu Quan to construct the internal space of his private organization. Lin Yuan had previously agreed to give Hu Quan the Bronze/Legend Wood Weaving House Centipede within 10 days. He had completed the enhancement of the Bronze/Legend Wood Weaving House Centipede in just a few hours. However, he was not in a hurry to give it to Hu Quan. Lin Yuan planned to give the 3 Silver/Legend Mountain River Eternal Life Carps to Hu Quan after giving them to the Wood Weaving House Centipede. Then, he placed the 3 Mountain River Eternal Life Carps into the Red Sandalwood Longevity Fish Tank. The Red Sandalwood Longevity Fish Tank was paired with all kinds of phase as an auspicious scene, and one had to be able to distinguish the priority. In the past, the Bronze/Epic Dragon Phoenix Landscape Carps were the masters. Now, the masters were replaced by the Silver/Legend Mountain River Eternal Life Carps. However, the 99 lustrous winged butterflies, 99 spirit-containing hibiscuses, and 99 5 fortune ranches were still only at Bronze I/Flawless. Therefore, these secondary spiritual physicists would also receive a boost in strength. As an auspicious scene, only complementing each other could reflect the harmonious aura within. Otherwise, this auspicious scene would seem a little top-heavy. The Mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer also returned when the sky was getting dark. The Mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer each carried big and small bags. Obviously, they had just returned from the mall. However, Endless Summer's bags were mostly filled with spirit accessories and clothing. The Mother of Bloodbath's bags were filled with all kinds of snacks and pastries. During dinner, everyone was more happy. On the contrary, the Mother of Bloodbath, which had brought back all kinds of delicacies and snacks, looked a little depressed. During the meal, the mother of Bloodbath had already said no less than 10 times that Lu Jie's cooking was still the best. Lin Yuan could not help but think. If he wanted to get a spider's approval, he had to first get the approval of the spider's stomach. Third update, end of this chapter. Chapter 348. In 2 days, Lu Jie would be able to return to the manor from the Radiance Sacred Hall. He wondered what Lu Jie's position in the Radiance 100 sequence would be after he returned to the Radiance 100 for 3 years. The source-type cocoon of evolution in Lin Yuan's hand would be given to Lu Jie when he returned. To celebrate Lu Jie's return to the Radiance 100 sequence. After dinner, Lin Yuan thought that since he had nothing to do, he might as well go to Star Web and buy the private faction's territory. During the day, Endless Summer and the Mother of Bloodbath had already applied for Star Web cards and could log on to Star Web at any time. Lin Yuan and Endless Summer agreed to meet at the Star Web Center. Lin Yuan first logged into his purchase with no loss store. Lin Yuan found that Listen had returned to his former self in the purchase with no loss store's fan club. Listen, who hadn't been chatting in the group for nearly a month, seemed to have become the focus of the crowd in just a few hours. No matter what the topic was, the Eye of the Typhoon in the group was always listening attentively. Even the 8 Class 3 Creation Masters and 2 Class 4 Creation Masters, who had joined the group later, could occasionally strike up a conversation with Listen. Lin Yuan couldn't help but sigh at Listen's magical diplomatic talent. If different people said the same thing, some people would feel that it was righteous, while others would unconsciously make people think the wrong way. If Listen's ability was used in the right place, it would be extremely terrifying. Apart from measuring the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's value, Lin Yuan had asked Listen to come to the royal capital for a face-to-face talk. Lin Yuan listened with appreciation. In fact, compared to the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, Lin Yuan felt that Listen might be more useful to his faction. Indigo Azure City was not far from the royal capital. If one was quick, they could reach the royal capital from Indigo Azure City in 3 days. Should he help the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce get through this crisis and absorb Listen into his faction? He still needed to see Listen before he could make a decision. If Lin Yuan controlled the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and let Listen continue to manage it, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce wouldn't be able to do so. In that case, Lin Yuan would definitely inject a lot of resources into the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Although Lin Yuan had a good impression of Listen, sometimes he still needed a willpower rune oath to be the most trustworthy. If he could not firmly control those small jigsaw puzzles hidden in the dark under his private faction Sky City, he would not be able to survive. In that case, Lin Yuan felt that there was no need for these small puzzles. He first hung the 10 flower brocade pearls in his purchase with no loss store. Lin Yuan planned to continue using the blind trade mode after displaying the 10 flower brocade pearls. The intermediate strange flame that he had obtained last time could still be used for a period of time. Therefore, he chose to exchange for the Silver Flood Dragon Species Phase Essence Blood as his blind trade target. He would definitely be able to exchange the flower brocade pearls for the Silver Flood Dragon Species Phase Essence Blood. However, he wasn't sure how much he could get. However, the Flood Dragon Species Phase Essence Blood that could be exchanged for 10 flower brocade pearls should be enough for Blackie to use for a period of time. He did not care about the commotion he caused when he took out 10 flower brocade pearls and displayed them in his purchase with no loss store. During this period of time, many creation masters from the various factions had arrived. Although they were no longer staring at Lin Yuan's Star Web store like before, their attention did not decrease at all. Now, he had taken out 10 flower brocade pearls to display in his purchase with no loss store. This caused the attention that had not cooled down before to soar rapidly. This was because he had displayed 2 waves of flower brocade pearls in a row. Moreover, he displayed 10 of them each time. This proved that the number of flower brocade pearls in the purchase with no loss store was not small. Otherwise, they would not display such a resource that was useful to creation masters in such a large number in the store. These factions also noticed that Lin Yuan was still using the blind trade mode to exchange the flower brocade pearls this time. This made them secretly feel a pain in the ass. The blind trade mode was undoubtedly the most torturous among all the trading modes as it added more chips to lose. If they bet less, it was very likely that the items would be taken by other suckers who were not afraid of losing out. Lin Yuan had openly marked the resource he wanted to exchange, which was the Silver Flood Dragon Species Phase Essence Blood. This made the major factions and the creation masters who wanted to exchange for the flower brocade pearls a little confused. Silver Flood Dragon Species Phase Essence Blood was rare, but it did not have much use. This was because creation masters were undoubtedly more willing to use high-grade Flood Dragon Species Phase Essence Blood to concoct spirit fluids than Silver Flood Dragon Species Phase Essence Blood. Therefore, many creation masters and factions did not have such useless things like Silver Flood Dragon Species Phase Essence Blood in their hands. Therefore, the factions and creation masters who were paying attention to the purchase with no loss store's display of flower brocade pearls. They began to buy large quantities of Silver Flood Dragon Species Phase Essence Blood. Of course, Lin Yuan did not know about this situation. Anyway, he only wanted to exchange for the resources he needed. Even if he knew, Lin Yuan felt that the more Silver Flood Dragon Species Phase Essence Blood these factions and creation masters obtained, the better. In the end, they would all be harvested by him. Seeing that it was almost time, Lin Yuan went to the Star Web Center to wait for Endless Summer. Lin Yuan waited for a long time but did not see Endless Summer. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard a faint voice coming from beside him. Lin Yuan, I came before you. I've been looking at you for an hour, but you actually didn't recognize me. Lin Yuan immediately recognized that it was Endless Summer's voice. However, when Lin Yuan turned around, Endless Summer's attire gave him a shock. Lin Yuan saw a doll wrapped in star web clothing, which almost completely covered its body, standing beside him. Lin Yuan looked carefully for a long time before he could confirm that the person in the doll was Endless Summer through the two eyes that were exposed in the doll's hood. Lin Yuan could not help but hold his forehead. He really did not understand Endless Summer's aesthetic standards. In Lin Yuan's opinion, even if she had to wear a doll costume, it would be fine even if she had to dress up as a bee like the braised egg head. That would still be much better than Endless Summer's tree suit. Endless Summer's clothes were green, so green that Lin Yuan was flustered. Just like that, Lin Yuan brought a moving tree and went to the Star Web Center to handle the procedures. Under the staff's gaze as if it was an idiot, Endless Summer revealed its strength. Then, under the staff's gaze as if it was an immortal, Lin Yuan obtained the pass to set up a private faction on Star Web. After leaving the Star Web Center, Lin Yuan taught Endless Summer how to watch Star Web live streaming. Then, Lin Yuan helped Endless Summer find a fashion and beauty channel. Looking at the large number of Star Web fashion and beauty live streamers, Lin Yuan thought to himself. Endless Summer should be able to know that wearing this kind of tree doll outfit was not beautiful. Finally, after some selection, Lin Yuan helped Endless Summer choose a relatively simple women's clothing matching channel. Endless Summer originally liked those accessories and fashion. Now that it saw the Star Web fashion and beauty live streaming that Lin Yuan taught it to watch. This undoubtedly opened the door to a new world for the first time since Endless Summer reached Suzerain/Myth 3. Seeing that Endless Summer had gone to watch the fashion and beauty live streaming, Lin Yuan was relieved to buy the private faction's territory. Not long after Lin Yuan left, Endless Summer was watching enthusiastically when it realized that the live streaming channel that Lin Yuan had found for it was not broadcasting anymore. Therefore, after Endless Summer searched for it, she found two rather popular live broadcast channels. Endless Summer could not help but mutter. A 107-day documentary on becoming a crossdresser or a hairstyle teaching before the Spirit Chi awakening. Which one should I watch? Finally, after some hesitation, Endless Summer clicked on the hairstyle teaching before the Spirit Chi awakening. This made Endless Summer feel that a new world had opened up in the door to a new world. This new world was simply too wonderful. Latest update asking for votes. Recent nurturing is over, starting to enter the plot. End of this chapter. Chapter 349. Lin Yuan did not need to think too much about the choice of Star Web's private faction territory. This was because every private faction could teleport directly, like when he went to the Radiance Sacred Altar. This was also the reason why Star Web was more convenient than reality. If one wanted to establish a faction on Star Web and buy a piece of territory, they would have to pay a fixed price of 50 million Radiance dollars. It was precisely because of this high price that many rising factions with insufficient foundations knew that it was very convenient to establish a private faction territory on Star Web. However, they still did not establish a faction territory on Star Web. In fact, it was not impossible for some rising factions to come up with 50 million Radiance dollars. This liquid capital would have a certain impact on their faction's development. However, this was compared to the convenience of establishing a faction territory on Star Web. The impact of this 50 million Radiance dollars on liquid capital was also negligible. The main reason why these rising factions did not establish a private faction on Star Web was that they did not have the money to establish a private faction territory. Rather than being laughed at by the rising and veteran factions with some foundations, it was better not to enjoy the convenience of establishing a faction on Star Web. It was better not to enjoy the convenience of establishing a faction on Star Web. For a faction, sometimes face was the most important. 50 million Radiance dollars was not difficult for Lin Yuan. After such a long time, even if Lin Yuan earned enough money from the purchase with no loss store, it was almost enough to establish a private faction territory. Moreover, there was still the pinnacle class for Creation Master Cheng Wu's Radiance dollars in the Diamond Face storage box. In fact, Cheng Wu's Radiance dollars in the Diamond Face storage box had been spent. During this period, Lin Yuan had spent more than half of it when building the mansion and buying all kinds of spiritual ingredients. It had to be known that the price of mid-grade energy ores in a Diamond Face storage box was not cheap. The key was that there were simply too many mid-grade energy ores in a Diamond Face storage box. At that time, in order to help Lin Yuan gather enough mid-grade energy ores, Zhou Jiasun had gone to the Chamber of Commerce that supplied her. She had requested to pick up the goods from the Chamber of Commerce that supplied her. This operation had even consumed 1/3 of the reserves of mid-grade energy ores of the Chamber of Commerce that supplied Zhou Jiasun. It was precisely because of the purchasing power of Zhou Jiasun's store. The Chamber of Commerce that supplied Zhou Jiasun's Star Web store had directly ranked it from the Class 3 customer position to the main customer position. During this time, Lin Yuan's main way of collecting resources was to exchange items instead of using his own resources to exchange for Radiance dollars. As a result, almost all of his Radiance dollars during this period came from his purchase with no loss store. If Lin Yuan were to continue spending money at his current pace, in that case, it would not take long for the Radiance dollars he had earned from his Star Web store and the Radiance dollars that Cheng Wu had contributed previously to be used up. However, Lin Yuan was not worried about this at all. Once the territory of the Star Web's private faction was constructed, the Star Web's private faction would be able to enter the Star Web. As long as he sent out the fate letter, there would be king-class experts who had comprehended a willpower rune or major factions rushing to contribute Radiance dollars. All in exchange for the 1% chance of success in every letter. Now that he had the pass to build a faction on Star Web, he could not afford to do so. Without hesitation, he took 50 million Radiance dollars from his Star Web card. At that moment, Lin Yuan received a message from the Star Web officials. According to the Star Web's official message, Lin Yuan only needed to wait for a moment. A Star Web official staff member came to help Lin Yuan introduce the relevant matters after opening up a private territory. After waiting for less than 5 minutes, Lin Yuan saw a middle-aged woman with short hair and professional attire walk over. When the middle-aged woman walked over and saw Lin Yuan, her expression clearly froze. This middle-aged woman had been explaining matters related to the establishment of a private faction's territory for a long period of time to the factions that had just opened their Star Web territories. However, this middle-aged woman had never seen a young man who looked obviously less than 20 years old directly open up a faction's territory on Star Web. Most emerging factions had developed for a long time in the real world and accumulated a lot of resources. Only then would they open up a faction's territory on Star Web. The minimum requirement for a faction to open up a private territory on Star Web was to have a pinnacle king-class expert as the martial support behind it. This youth in front of her had opened up a faction's territory on Star Web. This meant that this youth in front of her not only had a pinnacle king-class expert as the martial support behind him. He could also take out 50 million radiance dollars in cash at one time. This made the capable middle-aged woman involuntarily sigh. A youth actually had such amazing power in his hands. Although the heirs of some veteran factions with deep foundations did not have such power, the more the veteran faction's foundation was, the more they would not let their heirs go out alone. However, the more established a faction was, the more they wouldn't let their successor roam the world alone. As long as the entire faction worked together to develop in this direction, it would be fine. They would not rashly develop in other directions and touch the areas that their faction had not set foot in before. If they infringed on the interests of other factions' development direction, they would be severely suppressed. After all, the corresponding areas of development would have veteran factions that were at the absolute apex and had the advantage in this direction. After all, in the corresponding field of development, there were veteran forces that were at the absolute peak and had an advantage in this direction. The capable middle-aged woman was only stunned for a moment before she immediately returned to her best state. When Lin Yuan saw the middle-aged woman walk over, he hurriedly went up to greet her. She only froze for a moment before immediately returning to her best state. She introduced to Lin Yuan the relevant matters after opening up a faction on Star Web with extremely high quality. After listening to the middle-aged woman's introduction, Lin Yuan could not help but secretly nod. It might cost 50 million radiance dollars to open up a faction's territory on Star Web. However, in Lin Yuan's opinion, this 50 million radiance dollars was not spent in vain. As long as one opened up a faction's territory on Star Web, one would be able to obtain 3 rights. The first right was to be able to invite all the other factions on Star Web that had opened up a faction's territory. Regardless of whether it was a veteran faction or a rising faction, the Star Web officials would help to issue an invitation. They could invite other veteran factions and rising factions on Star Web to visit their faction's territory. In fact, this right was an excellent way to show one's faction's foundation to other factions. At the same time, through Star Web, one could also communicate with many rising factions and veteran factions that one could not come into contact with in reality. Chapter 1, End of this chapter. Chapter 350. In fact, it could even facilitate some cooperation during the exchange. It could be said that such a right alone could not achieve such a result even if he spent 50 million radiance dollars in reality. The second right was that before the construction of his personal territory was completed, he would not be able to do so. He could seal his faction's territory and not allow outsiders to enter. In fact, on Star Web, outsiders could not enter the interior of a private faction's territory without the owner's permission. However, people from other factions could freely enter and visit the external environment of a private faction's territory. This second right was completely to protect the face of some rising factions that had just built their faction's territory on Star Web and those lacking in foundation. The third right was the most useful to Lin Yuan. This was because the third right could release a message to all factions that had established on Star Web. This third right was not like the first one, which was to show one's faction's foundation and increase the accumulation of connections with other factions at the same time. The third right was to announce one's faction's development direction to all other factions. If the first right was to show one's foundation, then the third right was to show one's faction's function. Due to the different development directions of each faction, their functions were also completely different. Some private factions were formed by a group of experts who could be hired to complete some missions in exchange for resources. Some factions mainly sold some rare spiritual ingredients. Some factions searched for rare phase all over the world. Some factions relied on selling information to obtain resources. Different factions had a variety of functions, and Lin Yuan could use the third right after building his faction's territory on Star Web. He could announce his faction's function to other factions. The function derived from Lin Yuan's faction's development direction on Star Web was to be able to comprehend different willpower runes according to each spirit chi professional. He could order a bronze/epic fey that completely matched the willpower rune. In fact, Lin Yuan only planned to use the third of these three rights. With this third right, it was enough to show Lin Yuan's faction's golden signboard. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard the short-haired middle-aged woman say, "You must be careful when using these three rights. You must be careful when using these three rights. Except for the second right, the first and third rights can only be used once. After using them, even if you want to spend 50 million radiance dollars, you won't be able to buy this right." The middle-aged woman spoke very seriously, and Lin Yuan nodded to express his gratitude. After the middle-aged woman left, Lin Yuan teleported into his faction's territory. He found that this faction territory was built according to the model of a B-class guild club. The environment outside was very simple and was filled with green flowers and plants. It could be considered quite elegant. The interior of the territory was a standard house. The shape of this house could not be changed, but the internal space of a private organization could be changed at will. After entering the private faction's interior, he found that it was nearly 2,000 square meters in size. In such a large space, there was only this long table and nothing else. The long table inside the territory of a private organization and the flowers and plants outside the organization could all be modified. As long as he placed the items scanned by the Star Web card inside or outside the faction, the transformation could be completed. As the owner of the private faction territory, he could change the interior layout of the house at will. This was the first time he had changed the layout of his private forces rooms for free after he had opened them. After that, he would have to pay 100,000 radiance dollars to the Star Web officials for every change. Lin Yuan couldn't help but sigh. Only the Star Web officials knew how to make money. At that moment, the 2,000 square meter area inside the private faction was like an office. It was divided into a total of 3 floors and many rooms. Lin Yuan completely erased all these structures. He turned this 2,000 square meter area into a separate space. This was Lin Yuan's plan. He planned to build this Star Web private faction's interior into a grand hall. Since it was outside the Star Web private faction's territory, Lin Yuan did not intend to build it. Therefore, he had to be able to deter other factions inside. Lin Yuan did not care about the foundation of those rising factions. The key was to intimidate those veteran factions that had class 4 creation masters overseeing them. Although there were no decorations in this grand hall of nearly 2,000 square meters, just by looking at its spacious area, one could feel a grand aura. Since Lin Yuan's private faction was built on the floating island Whale's Back, he planned to call it Sky City. Therefore, this Star Web private faction's grand hall should be designed to be like in the sky. Since Lin Yuan's private faction was built on the floating island Whale's Back, he planned to call it Sky City. However, he was not in a hurry to immediately start the construction of this hall. He took out the bronze/legend Oath Lily of the Valley and placed the pagoda-shaped bronze/legend Oath Lily of the Valley, which flickered with a lustrous white halo, on the free long table in the hall. Then, he left Star Web. However, when he left Star Web, he did not use the second right after establishing a faction. Therefore, after Lin Yuan's faction was built, apart from the main hall in the territory, no one could enter. The external environment was displayed to all the other forces, regardless of whether they were rising forces or veteran forces. Lin Yuan did not care so much. Not long after he logged off Star Web, his phone rang. Lin Yuan picked up the phone and realized it was an unfamiliar number. However, when he picked up the phone, he recognized that it was Listen who had called. Great God, I might have to postpone my trip to Royal City for a while. Listen paused slightly at this point. Before Lin Yuan could ask for the reason, Listen said, "That's right. Great God, I plan to clean up the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's interior before going to the Royal City to see you. After that, I'll move it from Indigo Azure City to the Royal City. Anyway, most of the resources controlled by the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce are on Star Web. It won't affect those offline resources even if they move to the Royal City." When Lin Yuan listened to Listen, he could hear the firmness and sincerity in his words. This made Lin Yuan raise his eyebrows. This might be the reason why Listen could become the Eye of the Storm in his purchase with No Loss Stores fan club. Today's second update, end of this chapter. Chapter 351. It was supposed to be just a meeting and discussion. He only showed that he was considering accepting Listen and the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's allegiance. But even so, Listen had taken out all his sincerity and removed all the chaos and unstable factors in the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. After that, he would show Listen the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's best situation to him. It was not so much that Listen was fighting for a chance to be loyal to him. It was more like he was responsible for the decision that Lin Yuan was going to make. Listen was a little nervous after he finished speaking about his plan. At that moment, he heard the youth's sunny and magnetic voice on the other end of the phone. "Okay." Upon hearing this word, on the other end of the phone, Listen, who was a little nervous, immediately smiled. Then, he decided to cut the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's chaotic situation as soon as possible within this week and carry out a ruthless change. After experiencing the previous incident, Listen understood a principle. Any unstable factor was a fatal variable at a life-and-death juncture. Even if it was advantageous before, it could become the most ruthless knife to the core at a life-and-death juncture. After hanging up the phone, Lin Yuan went to take a shower. He felt that it was time to adjust his work and rest schedule. In the past 2 days, everything in the mansion was going on in an unstable manner. Wen Yu was analyzing the information of the major veteran factions. Take a faction, for example. The resources in terms of information were often equivalent to the faction's eyes and ears. Almost all the information in Lin Yuan's private faction came from Wen Yu. The source of information that Wen Yu came into contact with came from the Radiant Moon Palace. This directly ensured that Lin Yuan's information on the major factions was 100% accurate. The Radiant Moon Palace's information on the major factions, whether they were new or veteran factions, was like an instruction manual. However, under Wen Yu's arrangement, all the information was organized into the most suitable for Lin Yuan's private faction. In the past 2 days, Lin Yuan had to go to the Radiant Moon Palace almost every day. He went to have a question-and-answer session with his master, the Moon Empress. Previously, when the Moon Empress was having a question-and-answer session, it was mainly Lin Yuan asking and the Moon Empress answering. However, during this time, Lin Yuan did not go out to train. He spent almost all his time enhancing phase in the spirit-lock spatial zone. Therefore, Lin Yuan did not have so many questions to ask the Moon Empress. Thus, the question and answer session for the past 2 days became the Moon Empress asking and Lin Yuan thinking. The Moon Empress answering and Lin Yuan remembering the answers. Then, according to the Moon Empress' previous question, Lin Yuan started to ponder. Lin Yuan asked again, and the Moon Empress answered again. After going back and forth 3 times, Lin Yuan was basically able to integrate all of these problems. For the past 2 days, every time Lin Yuan left, Mystic Moon would tremble in fear. Mystic Moon couldn't understand why the Moon Empress was so happy. To the Moon Empress, during the past 2 days of question and answer sessions, she finally experienced the feeling of teaching a disciple. This feeling gave the Moon Empress a sense of accomplishment. Most of the questions Lin Yuan had asked the Moon Empress were problems he was currently facing. After asking the Moon Empress, he received the answer to his current question. Lin Yuan immediately understood the problems that he had not understood before, and he was suddenly enlightened. However, he had only encountered a small number of problems, so the questions he asked were rather one-sided. During these 2 days, the Moon Empress would teach him the problems or knowledge that he needed to learn at this stage. The Moon Empress used a question and answer method to teach Lin Yuan. This gave Lin Yuan a new understanding of many of his views. The Moon Empress had always been an overbearing person. However, when she decided to accept Lin Yuan as a disciple, she had already made plans. In the Moon Empress' opinion, accepting a disciple wasn't about managing the disciple. Teaching a disciple wasn't about controlling the disciple. Therefore, after understanding Lin Yuan's thoughts and persistence, the Moon Empress retreated behind him. She had been using her own way to do what a master should do for Lin Yuan. This was a master's respect for her disciple. In fact, in Mystic Moon and Cold Moon's opinion, the Moon Empress had never been a person who was good at expressing her feelings. However, in the past half a year, the Moon Empress had been a teacher in a flurry after deciding to accept a disciple. Now, she was able to watch her disciple grow in her own way. This was Lin Yuan's progress, and it was also the Moon Empress's progress. In the Moon Empress' eyes, her disciple was her inheritance. For the past few days, Lin Yuan had been learning the Moon Empress knowledge. After returning to the mansion, he had raised nearly 50 black dragon eye spirit siphon goldfish in the spirit pool. Every half a day, he would drip a drop of diluted dragon species blood. The effect of dragon species blood and dragon species blood essence was completely different. For a low-grade dragon species Fey, all the blood in its body wouldn't be able to condense into 5 drops of essence blood. This kind of bloodline stimulation required a process, and it would take at least half a month for there to be an effect. At the same time, the massive and pure spirit chi in the spirit lock spatial zone allowed these dragon eye spirit siphon goldfish's grade and quality to increase very quickly. Lin Yuan had also arranged for Gray's tang fish. The tang fish couldn't be considered a fey. It was just a fish that grew in grass ponds. Its bones were very soft, and its flesh contained an extremely high amount of sugar. It had an excellent effect on Gray's nutrition. As a crane species fey, apart from its gray feathers, Gray could already be considered skinny. It was already so skinny that it was only skin and bones. Therefore, Gray didn't just have to repair its damaged genetic model, it also had to replenish the nutrition that its body lacked. For the past 2 days, Lin Yuan had been sleeping very early. Under normal circumstances, he would probably be able to wake up around 7:30 am, but this morning, Lin Yuan was still sleeping when he heard a knock on the door. This knock on the door woke him up from his sleep. But before Lin Yuan could open his eyes, he heard the mother of Bloodbath's voice coming from the door. Lin Yuan, it's getting late. Quickly tidy up and come down for breakfast. Lin Yuan was still a little dazed from being suddenly woken up. Got it. I'll tidy up now. After 3 to 5 minutes, Lin Yuan opened his eyes. By the time Lin Yuan opened his eyes, he was already fully awake. Lin Yuan helplessly tidied up his slightly deformed hair, which had just gotten out of bed. Looking at the hair on his head that was standing up, Lin Yuan decisively went to take a shower. After taking a shower and drying his hair until it was half dry, Lin Yuan went downstairs. Normally, the mother of Bloodbath didn't have the habit of waking people up for breakfast. Now that the mother of Bloodbath was abnormally waking people up for breakfast, there was only one possibility. Third update asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 352. That meant Wuxia was back. Otherwise, even if the mother of Bloodbath was a foodie, it would not be so enthusiastic about breakfast. Sure enough, when Lin Yuan went downstairs, he found Wuxia carrying breakfast from the kitchen to the dining table. Before Lin Yuan could even see what breakfast was, he was stunned. Based on the smell alone, Lin Yuan knew that Wuxia should have steamed small soup dumplings and crab roe soup dumplings in the morning. Lin Yuan originally thought that he was already fast enough, but he realized that he was actually the last one to come down. At this time, Hu Quan was waiting for his meal in high spirits. Lin Yuan knew from Hu Quan's mental state and the completely jade-textured wood fragments on the ground in the hall. Hu Quan had worked himself up again last night. On the other hand, Wen Yu was helping Wuxia. Trays after trays of soup dumplings and crab roe soup dumplings were placed on the dining table made of jade-textured wood. Before they were done, the drawers containing the soup dumplings and crab roe dumplings were piled up high. However, no matter how many xiaolongbao and crab roe soup dumplings there were, he would not be able to eat them. It should not be enough for the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer. As a suzerain/myth breed fae, Endless Summer ate a lot. However, Endless Summer wasn't very passionate about eating. Endless Summer was holding a small mirror and fiddling with her hair. Upon seeing Lin Yuan come down, Endless Summer immediately ran over and spoke. Lin Yuan, the Star Web live stream you recommended me to watch yesterday was simply amazing. For the first time, I learned that color can give new life to hair. Lin Yuan revealed a pretty boy's puzzled expression. Didn't I show Endless Summer how to dress yesterday? What does it have to do with hair? However, seeing how happy Endless Summer was, Lin Yuan went along with her. Actually, sometimes a single color doesn't look as good as it looks. Lin Yuan recalled the green clothes that Endless Summer had worn yesterday and could not help but say. Endless Summer nodded in excitement and agreement. I think so too. Less than 3 colors can't be called fashion. More than 5 colors is called taste. Lin Yuan revealed a pretty boy's puzzled expression. What he said just now was just a tactful way of telling Endless Summer that green looked much better when paired with other colors. But if it was some plain color, a single color wouldn't be a problem. Moreover, 2 or 3 colors should be enough for the clothing. If there were more than 5 colors, it would look like a Christmas tree. The mother of Bloodbath saw that Endless Summer and Lin Yuan were still talking endlessly. He snatched the small mirror from Endless Summer's hands and said, Sister Xia, let's eat first. We'll talk after dinner. Endless Summer sat at the dining table and said to the mother of Bloodbath. Let me tell you, Blood Sister, I've discovered the secret of fashion. When we go shopping later, let's go get styled together. I'll design one for you. I guarantee you'll like it. Lin Yuan felt that he had just found a simple way to match Endless Summer's clothes. It couldn't have inspired Endless Summer that much, right? How did she connect the two? Could it be that Endless Summer had an innate fashion sense? It was just a live stream about matching outfits. How did Endless Summer become Chartoni? Everyone in the manor had a very comfortable breakfast. It had to be said that Lu Jia's craftsmanship was really superb. This time, Lu Jia had made a lot of soup dumplings and crab roe dumplings with various fillings, which satisfied the mother of bloodbath. Just as Lin Yuan was about to ask Lu Jia about the Radiance 100 sequences ranking, Lu Jia suddenly stopped. Lu Jia said solemnly to himself, "Lin Yuan, if it wasn't for you, my insect queen would have evolved into a fantasy breed and replicated the source-type hurricane owlet moth with its platinum ability. I'm afraid I can't even enter the top 70 of the Radiance 100 sequence." Lu Jia's face was solemn when he said that. Lu Jia originally thought that he would be able to reserve the Insect Queen's platinum ability for the Radiance 100 sequence test as his trump card. However, when Lu Jia challenged the Radiance 100 sequence 30, Formless Entanglement, and Blue Fullness, he nearly failed. When Lu Jia was about to shake his Radiance 100 sequence ranking, Lan Pang revealed the trump card that he had never revealed before. If it weren't for Lu Jia's prompt decision to have the Insect Queen use its platinum skill to produce 7 hurricane owlet moths, Lu Jia wouldn't have been able to do so. He then let the 7 hurricane owlet moths create a hurricane and control it. Lu Jia was probably going to fail this time. This also let Lu Jia know that he was not the only one who was improving. In fact, his previous companions had not been silent for more than 3 years like him and had improved even more. At the same time, he was fighting the Radiance 100 sequence 30, Formless Entanglement, Lu Pang. This made Lu Jia feel his limitations in combat. This limitation was that Lu Jia could only contract one source-type life form, the Insect Queen. The source-type Insect Queen's contract almost occupied all the spiritual energy in Lu Jia's mind. This also made it impossible for Lu Jia to contract any other phase. At the same time, according to the Insect Queen's characteristics, apart from the Insect Queen, Lu Jia could not contract a second Fey or source-type life form in this lifetime. Although the Insect Queen was powerful, it could create 5 types of insects now that it had reached the platinum level. It seemed to have an absolute advantage in terms of numbers, allowing Lu Jia to be like an insect swarm on the battlefield. However, as Lu Jia became stronger, the opponents he encountered also became stronger. Gradually, the Insect Queen's problem was revealed. It was the 5 types of insect phase recorded in the Insect Queen's 5 abilities. Lu Jia could choose any combination, and it was almost perfect. However, apart from the hurricane owlet moth, these 5 types of insect phase had different genetic models. The other 4 types of insect phase might have simpler genetic models, but they were still a little weak. Sometimes, numbers could not give an absolute advantage. While the number reached the standard, the strength of the individual phase was equally important. Lu Jia's Insect Queen's grade was getting higher, and the insect phase produced according to the genetic model were also getting stronger. However, such an improvement was far from enough for opponents who had several fantasy breed phase. Therefore, this Radiance 100 sequence competition forced Lu Jia to face his own problem. Thus, until now, Lu Jia's mood was a little heavy. If this development continued, even if the Insect Queen's grade was upgraded to Diamond, it would not be enough. The Diamond ability recorded a type of insect phase gene with a simple genetic model and extremely powerful gene. It would increase Lu Jia's ability again, allowing his strength to take another step forward. However, it would definitely not allow Lu Jia's strength to have a qualitative leap. Chapter 1, End of this chapter. Chapter 353. This situation was what the Spirit Chi professionals said. The later they got, the more powerless they became. However, Lu Jia did not have the ability to change this problem. Lin Yuan saw that Lu Jia's expression was a little off, so he kept it in mind. Now that everyone was at the dining table, it would be awkward for Lu Jia to ask him if there was really a problem. Lin Yuan thought that after breakfast, he would ask Lu Jia what problem he had encountered when no one was around. As long as the mother of bloodbath was around, it would definitely be the top eater. Therefore, be it the soup dumplings or crab roe soup dumplings, there was nothing left. After eating, Wuxia began to clean up the mess on the table. When Yu returned to her room and began to sort out the major factions' information. Hu Quan had been working hard for the whole night, and now he was having breakfast. Hu Quan's eyelids had started to struggle, and he was ready to go back to his room and sleep until noon. In the past, the mother of Bloodbath was more active when it went out, but this time, it was almost as if endless summer had dragged it out excitedly. Lin Yuan sat on the sofa made of water rhinoceros leather in the hall and drank the Three Treasures tea that Wen Yu had brewed in the morning. Lin Yuan did not like the taste of the Three Treasures tea very much. However, when he drank a sip of the Three Treasures tea in this early winter season, the oil secreted by the pine nuts in the tea went into his mouth and into his stomach. It gave birth to a few traces of warmth out of thin air. The taste of the Buddha's hand flower was relatively bland and even a little bitter. However, this bitterness started from the tip of the tongue and spread to the base of the tongue before disappearing. At the same time, there would be a strange sweet aftertaste in an instant. It was somewhat like, I have a bright pearl that has been locked up by the dust for a long time. Now that the dust is gone, the light is born, and it shines through the mountains and rivers. The bitterness of the Buddha's hand flower in the mouth turned into a blazing sweetness before it reached the throat. This feeling of sweetness after bitterness, one could distinguish a trace of happiness in it. This mansion was like a big family. Wuxia took on the job of cooking, sharing and harvesting the taste of happiness while cooking. When you took on the job of washing clothes. Although the lustrous winged butterflies in the manor could clean all the dust in the manor without a speck of dust. As long as the lustrous winged butterflies flew around for a while, even the dirt on the body would be as clean as new. Even if the clothes were stained with large clumps of mud, the lustrous winged butterfly could help remove them. Therefore, it was reasonable to say that everyone in the mansion did not need to wash clothes or take a bath. However, bathing was never just to wash away the dust. It was also a way to relax. Therefore, the people in the manor still maintained the habit of bathing. Although the lustrous winged butterfly could make clothes very clean, Wen Yu still habitually cleaned everyone in the manor except for their undergarments. The clothes he had changed out of were cleaned. Everything in the manor's main residence was in good order. After a while, Wuxia cleaned up the tableware that he had eaten in the morning. Lin Yuan was sitting on the water rhinoceros leather sofa. Wuxia walked over and sat beside Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan, I heard a piece of news when I participated in the Radiance 100 sequence. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan asked. Big Brother Lu, are there any changes to the Radiance 100 sequence test this year? Wuxia was a little surprised to hear that. He had not expected Lin Yuan to guess so accurately. It is said that the Radiance 100 sequence test method is going to undergo a huge change this year, but the specific test content has not been announced yet. But when I participated in the Radiance 100 sequence ranking test, I heard that the Celestial Stairway on Star Web used to be one-on-one competitions. Now, the Celestial Stairway is going to set up a 2-on-2 duel. Lin Yuan's eyes lit up when he heard Wuxia's words. Lin Yuan did not care about the changes in the Radiance 100 sequence test. No matter how the test changed, there was nothing for Lin Yuan to worry about. However, he heard that the Celestial Stairway that Wuxia had mentioned could form a 2-on-2 team after a period of time and have a 2-on-2 duel. Lin Yuan was really interested. Lin Yuan had been watching the recent S tournament on Star Web, even though the current S tournament was not interesting yet. Even though the S tournament was not very interesting now, it was still in the elimination stage, and the strong teams could instantly kill the weak teams. The duels between the weak teams were mostly the home ground of some silver phase. Occasionally, there would be a few gold phase duels, which were considered exciting parts. This also greatly reduced the level of viewing. However, when Lin Yuan watched the 5-on-5 duels between teams, he only felt his blood boil. This was because most of the one-on-one duels were a competition of individual strength, which was the phase grade and quality. Under the premise of equal strength, one would use one's intellect to affect the duel's outcome. Therefore, in the end, the Star Web one-on-one duels were still based on individual strength and intellect. However, when Lin Yuan watched the team competition, he found that it mainly relied on the cooperation between the teams. Although absolute strength could crush the opposing team in the team competition, sometimes, cooperation and strategy could directly affect the direction of the battle. In these elimination matches, Lin Yuan had even seen many weak teams without gold phase use intellect to overturn strong teams with more than 2 gold phase. In fact, he had seen many weak teams without gold phase turn the tables on strong teams with more than 2 gold phase with their wits in these elimination matches. However, the Star Web Celestial Stairway was about to launch a 2-on-2 duel. A 2-on-2 team could undoubtedly let Lin Yuan have a taste of the 2-on-2 team duel. A 2-on-2 team could undoubtedly let Lin Yuan have a taste of the 2-on-2 duel. Lu Jie looked at Lin Yuan's expression and knew that Lin Yuan was very interested in this 2-on-2 duel. Lu Jie's face, which had looked a little solemn in the morning, also revealed a simple and honest smile. The celestial stairway stars between members of a Star Web team cannot exceed 5 stars. I'm now celestial 17 stars. Lin Yuan replied with a smile. Then I'll be able to team up with Big Brother Lu when I reach celestial 12 stars. Lin Yuan had long known that Lu Jie's current celestial stairway was 17 stars. Since Lu Jie's insect queen had recovered, he had never participated in a celestial stairway duel. Lu Jie usually made appointments with friends on Star Web to train his strength and combat skills through private duels. Therefore, Lu Jie's celestial stairway stars had not increased during this period. 3 years ago, Lu Jie's celestial stairway was 37 stars. In the past 3 years, Lu Jie had not participated in the celestial stairway duels. According to the celestial stairway's rules, he would automatically drop 1 star every 2 months. This caused Lu Jie's celestial stairway stars to fall to 17 stars. Lu Jie had always been considered a sequence member in the Radiance 100 sequence who was not enthusiastic about the celestial stairway. Second update, end of this chapter. Chapter 354. Although Lu Jie had returned to the Radiance 100 sequence and entered the top ranks of the Radiance 100 sequence, he was not as strong as before. However, in terms of the number of celestial stairway stars, Lu Jie should be considered the lowest among the Radiance 100 sequence 100 members. Lin Yuan was only a 1-star celestial stairway now, so he still needed to win 11 duels in a row if he wanted to team up with Lu Jie. Lin Yuan originally did not want to challenge the celestial stairway again. However, Lu Jie had said that the celestial stairway would open in the future, and they would form a team to duel. It truly ignited Lin Yuan's fighting spirit. Lu Jie was obviously very excited. However, he was not excited about the 2v2 celestial stairway duel. Instead, he was excited about being able to form a 2-man squad and fight alongside Lin Yuan. Lu Jie's celestial stairway stars were far inferior to Black celestial stairway stars. Moreover, there was a difference of 16 stars. However, Lu Jie did not take the initiative to remove the stars. Taking the initiative to remove his star would go against his principles. Instead, it became an insult and mistrust of Lin Yuan. Lu Jie said as he recalled the scene of him and Lin Yuan fighting side by side in the Celestial Stairway's 2v2 duel. Lin Yuan, actually, my insect queen's normal ability, Bayonet Beetle, can provide flesh energy for your plant Fei. Lu Jie was very excited when he said this, but Lin Yuan was stunned. Lu Jie had always been a power offense-type spirit Qi professional. The source-type insect queen was more versatile in all aspects. However, under Lu Jie's choice of skills, the insect queen still focused on attacking in different directions. As for the bayonet beetles created by Lu Jia's insect queen, although feeding them to red thorn could increase the speed at which the sea of flowers spread, however, this was equivalent to Lu Jia giving up on the offensive capabilities of his bayonet beetles. The bayonet beetle might be an insect species Fey that had been inscribed with a normal ability template, but it was a normal Fey. However, if one really wanted to talk about the core of Lu Jia's battle strategy, it would undoubtedly be this normal bayonet beetle. It was precisely because of the existence of the bayonet beetle that Lu Jia was known as the heart of the swarm. However, Lin Yuan's strength was far inferior to Lu Jia's. Lu Jia's source-type insect queen was ultimately a platinum/fantasy breed. As a Radiance 100 sequence member and Lin Yuan's retainer, Lu Jia also had his pride in battle. This pride in battle drove Lu Jia to not rely on others in battle. But now, Lu Jia's attitude had changed. Lin Yuan could not help but think of Lu Jia's troubled and solemn expression when he was eating in the morning. "Big brother Lu, did you encounter any difficult problems in the Radiance 100 sequence ranking?" Lin Yuan sensed the change in Lu Jia's mentality, so he asked very bluntly. After all, such a change in mentality wasn't a trivial matter for a spirit chi professional. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's question, Lu Jia suddenly laughed silently. Lu Jia had heard the same thing before. Lu Jia remembered that the last time he heard about it was at the private auction held by the King's Stage Powerhouse. When his expression had changed when he had seen the hurricane owlet moth, Lin Yuan had asked him the same question indifferently. However, after that simple question, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. In the blink of an eye, the hurricane owlet moth was delivered to him. The scene then was exactly the same as it is now. Lu Jia was also very frank about what was on his mind. "Lin Yuan, I realized that as my strength increases, the insect queen is slowly becoming more and more limited. Therefore, I plan to shift my combat ability to support in my future battles. Now that the insect queen is already platinum level 7, I'll be able to complete my transformation to support after it advances to diamond level." As Lin Yuan listened to Lu Jia's words, he heard a sense of helplessness and powerlessness. As the insect queen grew to the later stages, it would face multiple fantasy breed Feys of the same grade. They would indeed be somewhat restrained and would no longer be able to rely on the insect swarm to suppress the battlefield in the past. It was not Lu Jia's fault for having such a mentality. On the contrary, Lu Jia was finding a way out for himself as a spirit chi professional. It was like an underground spring, gushing toward the ground. If they encountered a hard rock that their strength could not break through, they would have to change the path of the spring in order to be able to spurt out of the ground. Lu Jia was making such a decision. Lin Yuan looked at Lu Jia with a very serious expression. "Big brother Lu, do you prefer a combat-type spirit chi professional or a support-type spirit chi professional?" Lin Yuan's words made Lu Jia fall silent. The insect queen was a source-type life form that could develop in any direction. Even if Lu Jia wanted to become a healing-type spirit chi professional, the rarest among all spirit chi professionals, the insect queen only needed to use its ability to inscribe the genetic model of a healing-type insect species Fey. Lu Jia could become a healing-type spirit chi professional. However, Lu Jia did not choose this way. Instead, he firmly walked the path of a combat-type spirit chi professional. When a person looked at the future, if there was a choice in the beginning, how could it be easily changed? Lin Yuan looked at Lu Jia and suddenly wore a sunny smile on his face, revealing his small white teeth. Lin Yuan took out a source-type cocoon of evolution from the diamond Fey storage box that he had originally prepared for Lu Jia. This source-type cocoon of evolution was originally a congratulatory gift to celebrate Lu Jia's return to the Radiance 100 sequence. However, it was more meaningful to not use it as a congratulatory gift for Lu Jia's promotion to the Radiance 100 sequence. If a spring was blocked by a boulder, it could only get out by turning. Then this source-type cocoon of evolution would allow this spring to move forward and smash the boulder to spew out the ground. If this source-type cocoon of evolution could let Lu Jie regain his confidence and stick to the path he had always wanted to take, then, this source-type item would really make the best use of it. Big brother Lu, I found this by chance. You can use it. When Lu Jie saw the source-type item that Lin Yuan handed over, a bitter smile appeared on his face. After Lu Jie contracted the source-type life form, the insect queen, he could no longer contract any other source-type items or phase. How could Lu Jie not know this? However, Lin Yuan was the one who handed him this source-type item, so he hurriedly took it. However, when Lu Jie took a closer look at the source-type item in his hand, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. At that moment, Lu Jie felt a sense of joy from the bottom of his heart. It made Lu Jie feel a little choked up. The cocoon of evolution made of white mycelium in his hand seemed to weigh 5,000 kilograms. Lu Jie looked up and found that the youth sitting next to him was smiling brightly. Baiduan read the latest chapter of the Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.